going to tell y'all right now, all of these wonderful people would not be here without Patreon supporters like you. If you enjoy credible news, reviews, and commentary on UFOs and UAPs 5 days a week, you want to support this show. What's your name? Marty. Marty, look how easy this is, Marty. Pick up your phone. Boom! You're a Patreon member. I mean, look, it's so easy. You just click the link, which is right here. Just for $1 a month, you can support this show. Just fill out the information and pledge what's comfortable for you. It could be $1, $5, $10, or who knows. Just support.
Hello, and welcome to the Unidentified Celebrity Review. Hope you all had a great weekend. It's really great seeing you all here in the live chat. Hey, special thanks to Michael Huntington for donating, and sorry for not giving you thanks earlier. Also, thanks to Preston Padgett. I know you're a loyal Patreon subscriber, and we left you off that fancy calendar graphic, so sorry for that. And if there's anyone else who missed, sorry as well. We're sorting through all that. And hello to everyone in the live chat. It's great to see you all. Hey there, Earth versus Uranus, Matthew Riot, Jason Brown. Really real cool, really great seeing you all here again. Before we start today's show, I did want to remind you all of one of the best parts of the 1999 classic Office Space, specifically the Jump to Conclusions mat. If you're not familiar, it's a mat that you put on the floor, and it'd have different conclusions written on it, which you could jump to. And although it was mocked in the movie, I think the idea is genius. It exposes the ridiculousness of what we're all guilty of, especially in the area of the truly unknown, aliens and UFOs. And we all know the common conclusions: extraterrestrial, interdimensional, ultra-terrestrial, and of course the prosaic misunderstandings. And while we all try to stay objective, we've all inched towards, if not jumped to, the conclusion that we find most appealing. So when evidence comes in, it's almost impossible not to first think about how it might support your preconceived notions. And that's okay, but sometimes we need a reminder of these tendencies. A physical jump to conclusions mat is, in my opinion, a hilarious reminder. Lou, if you're listening backstage, a new merchandise idea? If you don't get these reminders, you might end up overlooking connections with other conclusions. Connections that might change the way you look at the mat. I think one example of jumping to conclusions without exhausting the other possibilities may have been the OSAP investigations at Skinwalker Ranch. A literal infectious agent did not seem to be on their jump to conclusions mat. But I don't want to jump to conclusions here myself. You can find more of my thoughts on OSAP and their conclusions in the latest video over on my channel, Rather Be Squiddy. I do, however, feel safe drawing this conclusion. It's going to be a fun show here today, and it's time to get things started. So let's welcome the mastermind behind this growing network and the host of the Unidentified Celebrity Review, Luis Jimenez.
Hey, what's shaking, rather?
Not too much. How you doing?
Not too shabby. I got a little bit of a cold. I told you about backstage. So I'm working through a head cold, you guys. So please, if I sound and look awful, I apologize.
Well, we can't tell, but get well soon.
I appreciate it. Okay. Hello. Good morning, good evening, good day, good afternoon, and aloha wherever you're at around the world. Welcome back to another episode of the Unidentified Celebrity Review. Your home for credible news, reviews, and commentary on everything UAP and UFO. My name's Luis Jimenez. That is our co-host, Rather Be Squidding. We've also got a really fun co-host today, Mr. Daniel Miller. What's up, Danny?
Hey, guys. How's it going? Good to see you.
It's going very well. Going very well. So Danny will be joining us for the show today, which will be a lot of fun. We've got a great guest. We've got a lot of stuff to talk about. But before we get to all that, of course, got to pay some bills around here. I want to remind you guys, we have a podcast right after the show airs. We put it up on iTunes, Spotify. So check us out there. Please leave a rate review. You guys have been leaving rate reviews on the podcast, and it's awesome. I love it. Thank you guys so damn much for that. Of course, we have our Patreons. If you want to join the Patreon, please check out the link down below. Patreons go from $1 to $500,000, depending on whether or not you've got the guts to support the show forever. Speaking of Patreon, we have a graphics guy that does all of our that cool little 80s cable calendar that I love to put at the beginning and end of every show. He's just going through a lot of personal stuff. It's been very difficult for him to sort of commit the time to doing this every single week. He's volunteering his time. He's done amazing work up until now. But there's just, we doubled the names on the list somehow. We didn't get Preston Paget on there again this week. So apologies to you, Preston, but I promise you I'm already going to be having a conversation with someone after the show today who hopefully will be able to get this back on track. So that way you guys are recognized and loved, and all of you are loved. So thank you.
Yeah, we appreciate you all.
So super chats are open. So if you got a burning question, definitely check out the super chats. Like, share, subscribe, ring the bell if you haven't already. We go live Monday through Friday between the Singularity Lab and here in the UCR. We do shows 4 days a week here, once on Singularity Lab. Daniel Miller's got a show on Tuesdays. Tomorrow he's got an interview with Graham Rendall, so that's going to be a lot of fun. And if you ring the bell, you're reminded every time we go live, so you won't miss any of this stuff. Check out the merch store. Speaking of, rather, are you saying we should make a Jump to Conclusion shirt?
A mat. I think an actual mat.
Like UFO mat.
I would love it. Yeah.
That would be actually pretty great. We're going to have to figure out how that game works, but that's not a bad idea.
A workout shirt that says mental gymnastics, too.
Ooh, not bad. Not bad. All right, quit giving away all of our ideas, guys. And of course, everyone's link is down below. We've got Daniel's, Rather's, and also our guest today, which is Franc Milburn. So Frank, I have his bio right up here. I just want to make sure I get it right before I start talking about Frank, because I'm new to Frank's work. But Franc Milburn is a former intelligence officer with over 22 years of experience producing threat and risk assessments for clients operating in hostile environments, from North Africa to ME. What's ME?
Middle East? Maybe?
Middle East? Yeah. Middle East? We'll ask him. I'm pretty sure it's Middle East. Iraq, sure. Latin America. He put Latin America as LATAM. I got that one. His experience includes providing strategic and operational assessments for extractive industries, as well as a variety of Fortune 500 aerospace and government clients. Frank is an alumni of the Royal Military Academy at Sandhurst and has a degree in international relations from London School of Economics. He's previously written for the Middle East Economic Survey, the Combating Terrorism Center at West Point, and the Institute for National Security Studies at Tel Aviv University. In short, this guy knows what he's talking about. And I can't wait to talk to him, because, I mean, the fact that someone with this kind of credentials, and you notice that there's nothing that says anything about UAP. These are all of his qualifying, this is his living right here in a bio. So without further ado, let's bring on this man. Our first time on the show, Mr. Franc Milburn. How are you?
Hey guys, how you doing?
Absolutely great. Well. And your sound is coming through perfectly. You listen to, perfect.
Fantastic. Standby laptop works.
Exactly. All right, so let's do this. Let's just highlight Frank here. There we go. It's my first time on the show, everybody. Again, I've got a head cold. I am running slow today. Okay. We'll get there. Also, I want to say thank you to the chat moderators, Tina Tomaszewski, and I know Aaron Desario's in there, and all of my chat moderators. Thank you all so damn much for being here. You guys are so awesome. Okay, so let's get started, Frank. I guess first I'll open the floor to just to give your background in your own words, your story, to anyone who's in the audience that's new, and myself included, who's unfamiliar with Franc Milburn, who's learning who you are sort of for the first time. If you'd like, floor's open, sir. Go for it.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, guys. My background is military intelligence and counterintelligence. I joined the army pretty young. I joined it when I was 17, and it was a good experience. I spent about 8 years, all told. I had quite a wide range of experience. I worked with the Royal Navy, the Royal Air Force, the Army. So as an intelligence officer, it was quite interesting because I was always on the move. It included stints flying in AWACS as well, watching large military exercises, providing threat assessments for pilots, debriefing pilots, all that kind of stuff as well. So it was a very good experience. I really came to the UAP field kind of about 4 years ago. I'd always been interested in it. I'd had books lying around my house from when I was a kid, like Charles Berlitz on Atlantis and Chariots of the Gods and all that kind of stuff that my parents were into. I've actually got a couple of UFO books here from the 1960s, right? Like Uninvited Visitors,
those are the best
right?
ones.
Yeah. So really old school stuff. And then I came to it for about 4 years ago. I started getting back into it. I'd kind of read books over the years. And then I started accumulating information like I always do and just taking notes and taking data. And then I got to the point where I was like, well, why don't I start writing about it? Because it was fascinating for me. And into last year, I produced my first paper on it. And the goal behind that was I wanted to do something different. And I wanted to get it published with a university affiliated think tank, a strategic studies think tank, because I wanted to get it into the academic sphere. What I liked about the one that I chose, the Begin Sadat Center for Strategic Studies, it's at a Bar-Ilan University, which is Israel's largest teaching university. So it had the credibility right there, but also the international advisory board, which had sort of big names from John Hopkins and also from King's College in London. So I really kind of wanted to get that and have a peer-reviewed paper and to get the UFO UAP material being treated seriously in academic circles. And what I found actually was in Israel, it was very interesting. I got invited by, unfortunately, one of the former members of one of the directors of the Israeli Space Agency, who's actually a rocket scientist. Unfortunately, he died in the recent conflict that they had with Hamas. Wow. Because he's an elderly gentleman. But on the back of the paper, he actually invited me to go and visit him in Israel to talk about it. And he said, actually, we in Israel, we take it very seriously. Now, there was the kind of controversy. There was the other Israeli space director, who was in the news. And it looks like he basically got told to shut up quite quickly, right?
Either he was told to shut up or he was just trying to sell that book. One or the other.
Yeah. But I found that they took it very seriously in Israel. And that was quite interesting because Israel's obviously a technologically highly advanced country. It's one of the most militarily, technologically advanced countries in the world.
Well, it's got the best air force on the planet, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yeah. I mean, in
pilots.
terms of, I'd say, in terms of operation capability, yeah. But I mean, then you have to look again. I mean, the Americans are very good as well.
Right.
I'd have to say the Brits are pretty good too.
Yeah, but, there you go.
Yeah, it's on it just because the neighborhood that they're in. They're constantly on alert the whole time. That is their life. That is their life. Their life is basically an operational environment, right? That's how they live. They live operationally. They don't like go on deployment somewhere for like 6 months and then come back. Like they are living it the whole time.
Right.
But in terms of like the sensors that they have, the technology they have, I mean, the Israelis are very good at taking, for example, American technologies and then basically adapting it to their requirements, and that's why they've got such a burgeoning aerospace and defense industry, and why they sell so much stuff overseas, because people know that the Israelis are A, very good at making stuff, and B, all their equipment is battle tested, right? They can see it being used in Syria. So that's where I came from, how I came to it.
No, I mean, that's awesome. So, okay, we've got a lot of stuff to go over, and I want to touch real quick on the Haim Eshed part of things, or the Israeli part of things, rather. So, Jean-Francois Chalabois with a $70 donation. Thank you so damn much. He said, let's get this started. Cheers at Jazz Shaw. You've been called out, Jazz Shaw. Someone is asking you to take a shot, sir. So, please go for it. And then we've got a $5 donation from... or £5 donation from Project Unity, as I like to call Jay Malibu, showing my support, and also ask Frank what are his thoughts on the time travel / converging timelines issue in relation to the phenomena. Wow, we're going to go right into it, aren't we, Jay? We're going to go right into it. I'm going to save this question real quick because I wanted to touch how I hear about the Israeli military all the time and how advanced. And of course, I know the United States has a very good relationship from a military standpoint. I know we sell them a lot of our equipment.
Yeah.
How well known or established is the Israeli space program? Because I didn't even know, I was not aware of an Israeli space program before Haim Eshed came out and made these insane comments. But I mean, could you give us a little bit on the Israeli space program? How important is it to the other space programs in space, for example, NASA or the Russian space program?
Well, I mean, it's very important to them. I mean, the Israelis are concerned with the domination of space, basically as a battlefield tool, right? As a surveillance tool, so that they can dominate the high ground. You know, the satellites. They've got nuclear weapons, although they don't admit them. Okay, they've got submarine ballistic missiles. They've got land-based ballistic missiles as well. Okay, so it's important to them to have control of the space for surveillance purposes, and also for for targeting of their long-range weapon systems, including their strategic systems. So, I mean, they're very, very sophisticated in that regard.
Okay. Well, that makes sense. I mean, it would only make sense that they would have a space program, especially if they run a military as advanced as it is, that they would have to be coordinating with satellites, I'm sure, that they put up in space. So that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, sorry, look at their neighborhood as well. You know, they've got like Iran. You know, until very recently, the Gulf states were still hostile. They've got Egypt that they've got an uneasy peace with, but they were at war with for years and years, for decades. Okay, they've got a whole lot going on in Syria. They've got Russian military activity, Syrian military activity. They've got Turkish military activity, American military activity, and also activity of malign sort of hostile Islamist organizations, right? Extremists.
All right, well, let's get into this. Let's just dive right in. So Jay's question about your thoughts on time travel and converging timelines issue in relation to, I'm assuming, the UAP phenomenon. What I know you guys had and I got about a quarter of the way through the interview with Jay, and I want to go back and finish the rest of it. We love Jay Malibu here. So thank you for the question. Thank you for the donation. But what are your thoughts?
What I'm hearing, I've been in conversation for some months with people in the intelligence community and with people who are involved in science of UAPs, like propulsion, and who understand UAP technology, right? And who are researching the technology and how to develop it further. And a popular theory with them is future humans, okay, as representing the source for some of this technology. They're not saying all UAP are future humans, but they're saying that there's a fair proportion that are future humans. This has been known for quite some time, according to my sources. At least they also talk about a cataclysm that happens on Earth. And what happens is you have humans coming. This is the theory, right? Because I can't prove any of this. You have humans coming back from the future who are very close to when just after the cataclysms happen, right? So they haven't evolved that much, and they're coming back because they want to prevent the cataclysm because it causes a lot of problems, obviously, on Earth. And then the other theory is that Greys are us from the future, and this is something that Michael Masters has put forward, and which I discussed with him actually quite recently. My sources say that the Greys are malign actors because even though they are seriously messed up from a low O2 environment, and they've got some kind of like weird neuropathy that messes them up, they are basically much further ahead of after the cataclysm. Okay, but they have an interest in the cataclysm occurring because even though they are messed up, they want it to happen because they still want to exist, right?
What are the theories on what this cataclysm is? Is it like a nuclear mutual destruction? Is it like an asteroid? Is it a new ice age?
Yeah, one theory that I hear scientists talking about is Nibiru, which is this planetary system that passes every, I think it's 12,800 years, right? And the last time was kind of Noah's Ark. So according to them, we're due a new one. We're due a new one soon, which maybe isn't that funny. I shouldn't be laughing. And that has basically an asteroid cloud that comes with it, and according to the theory, and which messes up the Earth. The other theory is that there's a nuclear element, a nuclear accident, or a nuclear war. And then there's all kinds of other theory and supposition that you have malign actors from the future who actually want to initiate nukes to make sure that the cataclysm happens. I don't know. This is all way out there stuff.
Right. Yeah, no, this is, and I'm glad that you preface it that way because obviously none of us know this, but this is sort of the grumblings that you're hearing. So just FYI, everybody out there.
People that I talk to say they have seen briefings to this effect, right? And these are people, I vetted them. They know people that I know in the intelligence community. I've vetted their companies. I know where they live. I've looked at their properties on Google Earth, right? I know where they are. I know who they are, and I know what their CVs are, and I know what some of the programs that they've worked on. These are serious people, not some conspiracy kooks on a forum. These are serious people who do contracting, and serious scientists and serious people in the intelligence community. But as I say, it's theory and supposition because I can't prove it. So I keep an open mind. I don't know.
Yeah. Do you have any idea what maybe some of the supporting facts that these people base these theories on? Because, as far as, the public knowledge, it seems like all we can really say for certainty is that there's weird, unexplained things in the skies, right? And it seems tough to follow that from, these links for, grays and, what they actually are. It seems very hard to nail those down without additional information.
Sure. I'm told, and again, I can't prove this, right? I am told that it comes from interactions with, so-called what you might call a temporal agent. People who have come back, some of them very, very far back, maybe hundreds of years or even thousands of years, but who've come back, who come back to basically manipulate timelines to make sure that certain things happen. Because, and I'm told that the Mandela effect is real. And that it's incredibly complicated, the way that it works, but there are different groups working against each other. But the information from this comes from interactions with these agents who've come back, and it also comes from analysis of retrieved craft.
Wow.
That's what I'm told. I can't prove any of this.
No, obviously. Well, let me ask, would you, because we got, of course, as you were saying this, I'm like, I wonder if Frank catches as much shit as, say, a Lou Elizondo for being a psyop or disinformation. I mean, like Spaghetti Lee here says sources ? 400 times. Here we go. So, like, how do you respond to something like that?
Well, I just say, it's theory and supposition until proven otherwise. But obviously, I'm not going to burn the people that I talk to. I mean, to be honest, I've got to the stage now where it's stuff that a lot of the stuff that I hear, I wouldn't write about anyway, because I don't believe that it's in the national interest of either the United States or its allies. Okay, so
you obviously take this, seriously and give it some sort of credence. Is that mainly just because of the sources that it came from, their positions, or is there anything else that we could maybe verify this information for, or anything else that gives it credibility?
I can't. I mean, I could name the sources, but I'm not going to. And I don't expect people to believe it. It's like I said, it's theory and supposition. When I've got a fact, I'll say it's a fact, and I point to the document or the person who's actually said it. Like in my first paper, I reference Eric Davis a lot. I've got some of his emails. Okay, you can say that's fact. This person has said it. Okay, like these craft are off-world. One email that I had. Other sources, no. People just have to take it as they take it. They either take it or they don't. But I'm not going to reveal sources.
Well, I can tell you that's comforting to me. I mean, if you've got a track record of giving the source when the source is vetted but also verified through you, and you got the permission of the source to say, yeah, go for it, use my name, with Eric Davis, and you got the emails and things to back it up, it would be a whole nother story if you were doing all what you just said and then saying, oh no, that's fact, take my word, you got to just believe me, which is like, no, we can't just believe you. But if you don't have the track record of doing those kind of mischievous things, then I'm going to go ahead and give you the benefit of the doubt. If you've got a track record of good work that points out, you look, here are the facts, here are the emails, here's everything that you guys can check, and this is what the fact is. Otherwise, it's just, like you said, conjecture and hearsay until we can get actual facts. But the thing that gives you a little bit of hope that these things are real is, I'm assuming that you're not hearing these things from just one source. You're probably hearing them from multiple.
That's correct. Yes, that's correct. That's correct. I mean, when you spend months and months talking with people as well, you get to know people. I mean, one of my sources is somebody that I've actually worked with recently as well. These are people that I know and that I've come to trust. You obviously, with my background, you're trained to evaluate sources, people's motivation for talking to you. You're trained to evaluate their character. People can bullshit you for a while, but consistently over like months and months, it gets harder and harder and harder to do. And especially when it's corroborated with what other people are saying. But look, I say, I am very, very wary of, there's so many like charlatans and just like complete bullshit artists, right? That have been come and gone in the UFO community, especially, and also, obviously in the intelligence world as well. So I'm really, really wary of that, of stating things as fact. I state what I know, I'll state as fact. If there's an email, I'll state as fact. If there's a public statement, then I'll state it as fact. Otherwise, it's theory and conjecture.
Yeah. Well, I was just thinking, I was just thinking, I wonder if Frank has looked over our shows and come to a conclusion of what kind of people we are. Like, are we government insiders? Are we propagandists? Or are we just a whole bunch of guys trying to figure out what's going on?
I think you guys are like me. You're regular guys trying to figure out what's going on. What I like about your show is that you take things very seriously, and I looked, I really enjoy your show. You've got some really great guests, and you've had some really great guests. I thought the big phone home is really, really fun as well. And that's the other thing, is that you guys have fun when you do it. It's not all like really serious and doom and gloom. You can have a laugh as well while you're doing it, and that's really important.
Well, Brother, what were you going to say? Sorry to cut you off.
Well, yeah, I was going to wonder, what's your theory on why this is all still classified? We get the line that there's, means and methods from these photos and stuff. But if we really have, the government is, interacting with these agents and, has recovered craft and stuff like that, couldn't they, what's the rationale for keeping that from us?
Well, there's a few, okay? First one is if it's true, right? If it's true, and this is what I'm told, it's like you don't want to have these kind of temporal manipulations known, because if, for example, somebody gets killed and they haven't invented something yet, it has a Mandela effect all the way down the line. So this is not something that you want to have in the public domain. Otherwise, people will start, things will start changing that shouldn't be changed. I had a long talk with one scientist, and they were saying to me, like, you simply can't, even though we are studying these crash retrievals from the future, right? But we can't start publishing stuff, because the person who's supposed to publish that, right? If we publish it ahead of schedule, then the person who's supposed to publish it won't have figured it out, and then everything will change because they won't have invented this UAP technology. Do you see how complicated it gets? Right? That's what I'm told. So that's one reason. The other reason is, everybody's talking about, free energy, and why don't we have it in the world? And that's all great. And, everybody could be, have free, clean energy, and the planet would be a lot better off. Yeah, that's one way of looking at it. But the other way of looking at it, I'm told, is that the technology with these UAPs is so destructive that it would literally tear the fabric of space-time, create a wormhole, and then you don't need a delivery system to go to the other side of the world to deliver a nuke. You just blow up the whole planet anyway. It's the drawing of energy from the ether, and they won't tell me what it is, obviously, because it's classified. But one of the great UAP report, which was analysis of Carrier Strike Group 11's interaction with the Nimitz, right? The one that SCU did. Okay, I'm a member of the Scientific Coalition for UAP Studies as well. I didn't write the report; smarter people did. But they estimated that the Tic Tac had a parabolic trajectory, right, of a tactical nuke every second. So that's a hell of a lot of power. Now, one of my sources has said to me that if you generate too much of this power in a particular point in space and time, right, that particular the fabric of space time can't handle it, and it gets ripped. Okay, and it's highly destructive, and that's why you don't have it in the public domain, because it will be like giving a 5-year-old a loaded pistol. Okay, and it's not ready for it. The risks of having it in the public domain outweigh the benefits. Okay, and they said to me, look, it's not about greed and about holding this back. Because look at it, if it was released, it would be controlled by the oil and gas companies and the banks anyway. There wouldn't be free energy. We'd be paying for it anyway. We pay for air, we pay for water, we pay for food. What, do you really think that we're going to be paying for energy? We're not going to be paying for energy. We would. And then obviously the other reason why it's not in the public, and this is case closed for me, is you don't want anything that you put out in the public domain goes to North Korea, it goes to Russia, it goes to China, it goes to other adversaries. And if you've got this free energy tech, do you really want some nut job group in Syria that wants to blow up half of Europe or the United States? Do you want them having free energy? If you look at Hezbollah in the Middle East, okay, which is Iran's proxy in the Middle East, I mean, they've earned billions in drug dealing, global drug sales, all kinds of nefarious activity. You don't think that they've got the money to get scientists to build devices if they had access to this technology and they knew what it was?
Yeah, no, I'd like to focus on that. The first thing you said about the Mandela effect, and they don't want these information changing the past. If they actually believe that, why would they tell you, and why would you tell us? Like, wouldn't that risk changing the future and risk all of this?
Well, not really, no, because I don't know who's going to develop specific parts of technology, and I haven't published it yet. So no, I don't.
But
think so.
also, I mean, rather,
sense.
What if this conversation is supposed to happen to set this chain of
don't
events?
do that.
I mean, we could play this game all day,
That's the other thing that's quite interesting. In one of the recent bills, it was talking about cooperation with greater cooperation on UAP with allies, right? So one of my sources said, well, is that maybe presaging a move to share this technology? Because if there is a coming cataclysm or a coming global emergency, then you might have to diffuse some of this knowledge to your closest allies, right? So it would be like Five Eyes, perhaps NATO countries.
What were you going to say, Danny?
Well, I guess, man, a lot to think about. So if we are trying to figure out this technology, and we believe reports, as you would imagine would be the case, I'm sure Russia and China are also trying to figure that out as well. It almost seems that if we just keep on kicking the can down the road and not talking about it, I feel like Russia and China have a pretty good motivation to really crack this nut, because then they're the ones who have geopolitical superiority. Can we really trust our own counterintelligence to be on top of that? Or it just seems like, too, by not addressing it eventually, we could have a major problem on our hands? Or is it so advanced that we're not even ever going to be close to figuring this out?
I'm told, okay, that they have crash retrievals. Okay, so first of all, they've got crash retrievals. Some of the craft can fly. That's what I've been told. But the technology is not well enough understood that they can start, building them in numbers and deploying them to operational squadrons. Because I'm told the question's asked, well, what happens if it stops working? What happens if it crashes? It's like, we can't fix it. We don't know enough about it.
Right.
Now, and I'm also told that they have, basically reproduction vehicles, what some people refer to as TR-3B. Okay. And the exact words they use, they said basically it's a shitty version of a UAP. It doesn't have all the 5 observables, but it's like it's faster and more maneuverable than any fighter jet on Earth. Okay, so they've got those. So,
well, can I ask you this then?
Yeah.
Then what's the concern if that's the case? If these highly funded military assets haven't been able to figure out, what's the worry about publicly revealing this kind of tech? I mean, if the U.S. can figure out parts of it, but not the whole thing, because we're just not there technologically speaking. What's Hezbollah going to do with that kind of information? Like, I don't think they'd be able to develop that without, plants, manufacturing, trillions of dollars. Am I crazy there? Or
no, I think if you're talking about, well, first of all, I'm told that the United States is about 20 years away from developing craft with the 5 observable tech. Right? I'm told that's the time frame. In terms of like a powerful and rich malign actor, non-state actor like Hezbollah. No, they probably couldn't build a UAP. I mean, how many countries in the world can build a 5th generation jet? Maybe the USA, right. Russia, and China. China's got a dubious one. Great Britain, maybe, right? But they still use parts from other countries. They buy stuff from Europe. They buy stuff from the Brits. British aerospace, it's huge in America. But so I don't think Hezbollah could build a 5 observable UAP. Not
China might, though, right?
Yeah, we'll get to that. But Hezbollah could certainly build, a free energy bomb. Right? If they had the access to it, they could certainly do that with the money that they've got. They've got billions, right?
Yeah. What do you say, rather? You're muted, buddy.
Sorry. Do you still have security clearances? And if so, how are you so comfortable sharing all of this that you've been told? It seems like this would be highly classified information.
I don't have security clearances anymore. I had British security and Five Eyes. As in, I had access to Five Eyes, but no, my security clearances lapsed years ago. I'm not told anything that's classified, and so I'm not breaking any U.S. laws or any other laws.
Well, this must be classified, right? Because it's not public information.
It's not public information, but it's not classified as in they're not giving me telling me what the technology is and what the what
Where
they're
it
actually
is.
writing about it. Yeah, they're not giving me the ins and outs. And also, I haven't talked about anything that I did in my background, and I never would. I mean, even if I described or I drew a cartoon or a diagram of like a military base that I'd been to like 20 years ago, okay, that could land me in jail. So I don't talk about my background or anything that I've done specifically.
Have you ever pressed your sources to ask them if they would, come out publicly and say this stuff directly?
No, I don't press them. I don't ask them, oh, tell me about this or tell me about. I just let them talk. It's not my place to cajole them for information. I would never do that. That would be irresponsible. And they talk to me because I don't do that. I just listen. And I will say I listen to everything else. We talk about family life. We talk about pets. We talk about all kinds of things. It's not just UAP. Sometimes you can talk for hours with people just about what kind of day they're having, right?
And they must know that you're sharing this information too, though, of course, right?
Yeah, they know that I talk about it. Yeah, they know that I talk about it.
Huh.
So, real quick question then: if this is something that we really don't want out for the reasons that you've described, that again, if true, certainly are pretty good reasons, they must not be very happy with what Congress is currently trying to do, because they're trying to get more information, and now you have the DoD setting up a permanent entity. So I'm assuming Congress isn't part of this circle of people who seem to be trying to work on this problem, or if they are, you would think they wouldn't be trying to so publicly create such noise about it. Or do you know more about that side, the legislative side?
It's not a problem, because I mean, okay, say for example we were talking about the next generation ballistic missile submarine, or the next generation attack submarine, or what the Brits call a hunter killer submarine. Okay, yeah, you could have a debate about it in Congress. It could appear in a bill, but anything that pertains to its capabilities, its systems, is not going to be in the public domain. So it's not a problem. Right. Neither UAP. If you want to talk about Congress, and this again is just a theory, and I've actually pressed Chris Mellon on this, and he's quite forthcoming when he speaks to me, and he just went dead silent on this. I basically said to him, as I wrote in my second paper, I said, basically, I think that you and Lou are concerned about adversaries like Russia, China developing this technology. You're also concerned about the potential threat from the intelligences behind UAP, and you guys basically want to get like 23 or 25 billion dollars for a Manhattan Project 2, and you want to bring all the special access programs and unacknowledged special access programs together under one roof, so they'll still be compartmentalized, but then you can have a director. So if there's a stumbling block, a bottleneck in one program, you can then say, okay, you can talk to this guy or you can talk to this guy, because don't forget from outside that particular working group, that particular SAP, because if you remember, Eric Davis said the principal stumbling block was, if you can't make an advance, you can't just ring up your mate and go, hey, have you got any ideas on the physics of this? Or you can't go and talk to another engineer, even somebody in another special access program. And that's what I believe it is. And if you look at my second paper, I mean, Lou Elizondo, he starts talking about such a program, and and it would have all the other benefits, and look at the Apollo program, how you've got so many spin-off technologies like Velcro from it. These guys want to go full on a UAP program. And that's why they've mobilized Congress. That's why they've mobilized, in my opinion, okay, this is just in my opinion. That's why they've mobilized Congress. That's why they've mobilized public opinion, because they want to get control of the special access programs. It's been hidden away for too long. If you look, Ross Coulthard, who provided us with Harry Turner, the Australian advisor to chief scientific advisor, who was an expert on UAP in the 1960s in Australia. Okay, I looked at that document. In the late 1960s, there were about 70 different anti-gravity programs, and of those, about 40 were at the DoD. Right, the others were spread. And if you look as well at the email,
and this is the 40s.
Yeah, sorry, this is in the late 1960s.
60s,
if you look at,
so I'm thinking it's like 40, 50. No, God, that's 60 years old by now.
Yeah, and if you look at that email in my first paper from Eric Davis to Jack Sarfati, and he says, people in the DoD know who you are, but your UAP propulsion ideas will have to pass by the DoD service labs and the Department of Energy service labs and review boards, right? So there's different SAPs, different unacknowledged unacknowledged special access programs. And what I believe is that Mellon and Elizondo, they want to bring these together under one roof and one big program, and they want to get the advances that have been basically stymied for 70 years. That's what I believe. That's my theory.
Dude, that's a killer theory. And save a follow-up if you guys have for that.
And tell me when you're ready for bombshells, because we can start doing bombshells.
I mean, I can't believe we're 45 minutes into this interview, and it feels, I swear to God, we're in a time machine right now. It's only
I feel like you've been
minutes.
dropping bombs, Frank.
Yeah, you've been dropping bombs the whole time.
Let me know when you want bombshells.
We're gonna get to the bombshells. But John Music with a $10 donation. It's being said, and we're going back to the Haima Shed on this question, that in the classified world, Haima Shed statements are being taken very seriously, and that Dr. Shed was absolutely not joking around. He's a legend in the deep black world. Thoughts?
Yeah, I can answer that one.
Yeah.
The gentleman who died, and he was actually a scholar at the Bar-Ilan University's Begin Sadat Center for Strategic Studies. He was called Abi Harevan. Very unfortunately, he died. He was a very nice gentleman. He basically, from the 1950s, 1960s, he was a professor of like rocketry, and he became an expert in like basically surface-to-air missiles and anti-aircraft missiles. He went to different various countries and helped them set up air defense systems. He then became he was a colonel in the Israeli Defense Forces. He then became director of the Israeli space program. I mean, literally a rocket scientist, a brilliant man. And I'll read you the email that I've got. He said, "Dear Frank, as you probably know, I am also a member of the Begin Sadat Center. Usually I'm involved in most space activities for many years. As a colonel in the IDF and the Israeli aircraft industries, as head of the Shavit satellite launcher program, as head of Israel Space Agency for more than 10 years, and as advisor to Ministry of Trade on space matters, and of course a member of the Begin Sadat Center. As such, I know Haim Eshed for many years, and I can assure you that he is one of the most professional experts in the space topics. As to the question of not being alone in the universe, there are many opinions, theories, and rumors on this subject, many of them based on observations made by serious scientists and military men who can agree with Haim's theory. I personally have not been involved in this kind of activity, but I can assure you that even in Israel, you can find people who believe that we are not alone, including myself. Frank, I will be happy to meet you and discuss the question. I live only..." And he gives his address, basically.
Yeah. Thank you for pulling that up, rather.
Cool.
I appreciate it. John Music is going to be coming at questions for you, I feel like, through this whole show. So thank you so much for the super chat questions. Did you guys have a follow-up on his previous discussions about Congress and his theories on that? Because if not, we'll go to this next question from John. So John,
I have the same theory. I agree.
Yeah. Okay. Great. John Music. DeLong said on a radio show that through military contacts, there have been many U.S. operatives having one-on-one direct contact with non-humans. Thoughts? And he also said that the real truth would make people freak out.
Yeah, I can absolutely agree with that. I am told that prominent remote viewers, and you'll probably know the names of some of them, are remote viewing the future, right? To check out the timelines, to check out to evaluate potential sources of threat, that this is continually ongoing. We only have to look at the skinwalkers at the Pentagon book. They had Joe McGonigal. He was brought in with other remote viewers as well to review to view Skinwalker Ranch to assess threats there. So I absolutely believe that. I am told by my sources that that they are in touch with future humans and this isn't just in a military or an intelligence setting. This is like in their everyday lives. Scientists, intelligence officers, because they are doing this kind of work, they have contacts with these kind of beings. Again, I can't prove it.
Yeah, and so I guess what those beings are saying is that they are from the future, and there is this cataclysm. I mean, I guess, are those things lining up as well? That whole with your sources as far as remote viewing with cataclysm with people, us from the future.
Put it this way, the remote viewing program is alive and well. One person that I speak to regularly is an IC remote viewer. They don't tell me what they view, or that there are commercial applications to it, and there are, as we know, there are intelligence applications, but it's still something that's taken very seriously. And don't forget as well, I mean, I've been talking regularly since I wrote my first paper to the godfather of everything weird and spooky at the Pentagon, Colonel John Alexander. He's probably one of the godfathers of remote viewing, right? He was right back there, right in the 70s. And also, he was at Skinwalker Ranch, like pre-NIDS days. As soon as Bigelow bought it, he was there. So I've been speaking to people like that, and yeah, I believe that if they say they've been in contact with an entity or with a future human, I believe it. I mean, these are serious people with established credentials.
Yeah.
I just can't prove it.
No, of course. No, I get that. And, but I mean, the thing is, you're not just some guy saying this. I mean, you're very, you've got the credentials in the history to back up your credibility at the very least. And then I just love that you preface everything with, or end everything with, I can't prove this. It's nice to hear that. Akashi Chris with a $3 super sticker. Thank you so much for that donation. Truly appreciate it. Gary Voorhees says, man, I wish someone from the future would give me some info. And I guess my question to that would be, why wouldn't, I mean, I guess it's tough, but like, why isn't there some push to get remote viewing on more of a public platform, more of a public discussion with remote viewing? Would it be because they might be afraid that some people might actually take this up, train themselves, or look into training themselves and possibly start getting this information on their own?
Well, there are commercial remote viewers.
Right.
There are, just as there are, commercial satellite imagery providers. But you don't want your capabilities and which are effectively in remote viewing capabilities of the people. Yeah. You don't want your best people being compromised or, being compromised by hostile intelligence services, adversarial services. And you don't want them leaving the service, because if somebody has that capability, you want to keep hold of them. Everybody wants transparency, whether it's UAP on the phenomena. Everybody's got, a huge amount of curiosity, myself included. It's just, I think sometimes the expectations are a bit unrealistic. I think it's easier for me coming from a counterintelligence background, because I was used to keeping things under lock and key. I was used to, having a clearance. I was used to, compartmentalization. I was used to seeing maybe and hearing about a load of things that I would just close away in some box in my head and never talk about to anybody else, even somebody that I've been working with in another branch of the military for years. Right? You just don't do it. You get used to doing that. So for me, it's easier. But for me, it's very frustrating. There's things that I'd like to talk about from my military days, which I can't, which would be relevant, but I can't, and I never will be able to until the UK says that it's okay to do so. Not something that's, maybe as fantastic and interesting as Elizondo or Eric Davis, but it's, a small piece of the puzzle. So it's easier for me.
You think you'll ever get permission to speak about it?
No, the Brits are much more uptight about all those sorts of things. Much more uptight.
I think what you have been speaking about is pretty amazing. I'm still kind of, stuck at the point where, if this is all not classified information and, you telling us won't hit one of these main three concerns, why don't they just tell us this directly?
Sorry, why don't they tell us what?
Why don't they tell us directly that there's a
when you say they, you mean his sources, right?
Or the sources or the government, they're higher ups, the main, the press agency, Susan Goff, why aren't they telling us these things if they're not going to hurt any of the objectives and it's declassified?
Well, I mean, what's been declassified is FOIA, but we've seen kind of obfuscation at the Pentagon. Now, whether that's deliberate, I mean, there was that email saying, we need to kind of control FOIA requests right on UAP. That would seem to me to be an effort to subvert the FOIA process, which is, what American citizens have a legal right to.
But they seem okay with leaking it kind of through you, but they're not okay with, directly confirming it. Would that be accurate?
Well, I wouldn't say that things are being leaked through me. I'm just, I'm a researcher, and without being big-headed, people have liked my first paper. People in the intelligence community and people in the science community who know about UAP. I'm told a lot of it is really, really incorrect, right? So, but they said to me, one of them said to me, "Oh, I've been looking at your paper. That's my first paper." And they said, "I've made a load of notes, but I probably wouldn't be able to. I probably shouldn't be doing this outside of a skiff." And then, they got rid of it. So they're not going to share it with me. They're not going to tell me, "Oh, yes, you need to connect these dots." And, they're not going to talk to me about the physics of it. And for good reason. And I don't mind that. It doesn't bother me. I have curiosity, but not to the point where I'd want to compromise, the security of the Five Eyes, America and our closest allies. That's not my game. My game is I personally want to see the Americans develop this technology. America's not perfect, Britain's not perfect, the Europe's not perfect, but hey,
it's better than China.
Yeah, I'd rather be living in America or Great Britain or somewhere in Europe than than being like a Uyghur Muslim or a Tibetan Buddhist banged up in a concentration camp in China. You know what I mean?
Right.
And I certainly wouldn't like to be living in Taiwan with the threat of Chinese takeover. That's just me. There's nothing against China. I love China. I've been to China. I studied Kung Fu in China, when I was a kid. Washed dishes in Chinese restaurants, studying Kung Fu, like in London, and then went to China. I loved the place. Spent a lot of time in Hong Kong too. And it makes me really, really sad to see the way that Hong Kong went.
After writing this paper, have you been approached about employment? Like, because I feel like maybe your paper wasn't a lot of it, you said a lot of it, what would you say, 60% of it was wrong, but maybe 40% of it caught their attention. Have they ever come to you and approached you and said, hey, would you like to join this special access program? Would you like to sort of help us out on what's happening here behind the scenes?
No, I mean, special access programs, no, but I've had, do you want to work with me on like a commercial venture or something, something outside of that? I'm not read in. So, I mean, I'll give an example. The recent airlift from Kabul, one of my sources who's intelligence community, he said, look, Frank, he goes, you've got a background in like logistics, evacuation planning, you've managed security for companies in Iraq. Do you want to give us, to come in and give your input on how to get people, out of Afghanistan? So I played a very little part, but that was one way, one kind of element of contact that I had. But no, special access programs, no. And I don't know if I'd want that either, because your life becomes shit once you're in a special access program. It really does.
Yeah. Rather, do you have any follow-up questions?
What's your report or your paper about? I don't think we ever addressed that.
Yeah, sure. Hang on, let me just pull it up, because I have actually kind of summarized it. In a nutshell, the two papers which were published at the Begin Sadat Center, so they were the Pentagon's UAP task force and American development of UAP technology, a fait accompli, right? The latter one was where Elizondo is talking about like a big program. So these papers basically, they assessed in depth the strategic implications of UAP, the potential threats posed by both traditional adversaries and also the intelligences behind UAP. I also looked at the post-quantum revolution in military affairs, and I theorized on the nature and the origin of the intelligences behind UAP. So it was the first open source examination of these topics by a globally ranked think tank, kind of like in a nutshell.
What was your conclusion on what you thought was inside the UAP?
A range. I mean, I keep an open mind. The future human hypothesis, that was really interesting, from Michael Masters. And now that I've, the last few months that I've been hearing about it from people kind of on the inside, I'm like, okay. But even they are saying that there are other possibilities. John Alexander, who I've spoken to a lot, the colonel, heavily influenced by him on like the precognitive sentient phenomenon, at Skinwalker. I don't know what that is. It's certainly not human, but that seems to be, UFOs are seen in the relation to there. That's a whole kind of like spooky, correlation of everything from poltergeist activity to cattle mutilations to portals to UAP. So I keep a very open mind, interdimensionals, ultra dimension, it's maybe a combination thereof, future humans from the future humans who use interdimensional portals to travel. I mean, take your pick, right?
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's, awesome that the academic community is engaging with these questions. You've experienced like a line where some of these academics won't cross? You get up to future humans or something, and then they'll throw their hands and say, "Oh, we won't go there," or have they been pretty open?
Yeah,
to
I mean,
what you have to say?
When the first time at the Begin Sadat Center, they were uneasy about doing something on UAP. But then I brought out, I said, look, Elizondo said this, Mellon said this, Senator Reid said this. It's like, you really can't hide it anymore. The pilots are saying this. You really can't hide it anymore. So then they got on with it. I think that the problem is I kept it very much kind of tuned to strategic studies, the threat. I was getting a bit woo-woo maybe for them with like Skinwalker and Jack Sarfati with his, his portal Skinwalker Ranch. But, you can't start talking about, all the really out there stuff, because at the end of the day, I've got to put footnotes, right? I've got to have notes. It's got to be referenced. You've got to ease people into it.
Right. Okay, so we got two more super chat questions to get to, and then we're going to get to the bombshells because I think people are dying for that. So this one is a $5 pound or £5 donation. Thank you so much, Mr. Baher. I live close to Porton Down and heard whispers of supposed recovered bodies from the Berwyn event. Have you ever heard of anything about the truth of these rumors?
I haven't heard about the Berwyn event. I have heard people talk about crash retrievals, and that's all I'm going to say.
Okay.
Yeah, I haven't heard of the Berwyn event either. I'm going to have to look that up.
Yeah. If you can, either hit us up on Twitter and send us the information on that. I'd love to check it out.
Yeah, I'd like to check that out too.
John, and by the way, everybody's links are down below. So if you want to send those to us, please. I mean, I'm sure.
Yeah, I'd be very interested.
Frank would probably be the best person to send it to. John Music with a $10 donation said, due to abductions, missing people, dead returned people, poltergeist events, cryptid creatures, DNA manipulation, U.S. working to fight back with EMP weapons and machines too close up, portals. What do you think?
Whoa, that's a lot to unpack.
That's a lot. That's a lot.
Yeah, I think, as I said, and hang on, I made a note here. And it's basically with relation to the DIA specifically, why they'd be interested. Okay, so why would they be interested? For example, if we're talking all these weird phenomena, Skinwalker Ranch, why would they be interested in UFOs? Well, we already know, Eric Davis talking about the DIRDs that ORSAT produced. They want to be able to project technology and engineering to 2040, which is incidentally the time by which China wants to have world supremacy. So with the DIRDs, they wanted to be by 2040 at a position where they could reproduce vehicles similar to the Tic Tacs of a similar capability in case they became a threat. Okay, so I think we know all about that. But if we're talking about cryptids and poltergeist activity and all the weird stuff at Skinwalker, well, we know that there are intelligences at Skinwalker that come through portals. We know that there's at least one precog sentient phenomenon, right? That they're highly malicious, although we could argue that humans are as well. So they can kill and exsanguinate cattle in plain sight of people without them realizing. They can kill canines. They can interact with humans invisibly, and they can affect technology like cameras, right, without being detected. So you've got reports of cryptids as well, like that direwolf that attack ranch animals. You unload like big caliber rounds into them, you unload firearms into them, and they're seemingly impervious to them. So from a military perspective, you want to understand those capabilities, and you want to be able to counter them, and you'd want to have them in your inventory. You want to get there before Russia and China do, and you want to stop your adversaries having these capabilities. And if you look at Reed's ATIP letter, and also you look at Skinwalker, the second Skinwalker book, they're regularly referencing, saying that they want to evaluate, are these phenomena a threat to U.S. national security, and not just the UFOs. If you want to talk about like shooting them down, UFOs, there's a whole section on that in my first paper where I talked to John Alexander, who actually developed directed energy weapons. I look at the characteristics of UAP. I've got a section on UAP weaponry as well, or what Jack Sarfati calls tic-tac tech. So I look at the different weaponry that UAP have, things that have been written about that weaponry going back to the 1960s. I look at, from a British intelligence perspective, what the British have written about UAP capabilities, what the Russians thought about UAP activities. And also in the second paper as well, I talk more about UAP weaponry, if anybody's interested in that. I hope that kind of answers the question, but it's quite a big one.
Yeah, no, it was a big one. But yeah, I mean, we'll have you back and maybe we could dig into it some more. Okay, so before we get to the bombshells, last super chat question, please. There's 202 of you guys in here watching live, so do us a favor, like, share, subscribe, share. We're about to get some bombshells, so share the link. Tell us, hashtag with bombshells, hashtag UFO Twitter. This should be good, so bring them in. Last question here from G West. I'm trying my absolute best to be on board with future human theory, but it's really hard. If we are that far advanced, why would we care about 2021?
So why would the future humans care about 2021?
Yeah.
Well, I think they care
about this year, or what is it about the last 50 years, 60 years that we've militarily been picking them up?
Well, I think they care about the past because what I'm told is that one group of humans, the ones that aren't totally bleeped up by the cataclysm, right, and haven't started to evolve to adjust to the new terrible conditions on Earth. This is a theory, right? Just theory. They want to stop the cataclysm happening. Okay, the adversarials who want it to happen, the Greys, and this sounds absolutely out there, but this is what I'm told, and I'm told that there have been briefing documents on this. They want it to happen because even though they are totally messed up, they want to basically exist. So that's why they have an interest in the past.
They want the cataclysm to happen.
Yes.
Does this cataclysm? I've heard that in the year, I think it's 2026 or 2028, we're going to have a really, really close call with a big asteroid, like sort of life-ending asteroid. I mean,
think that's what they're talking about.
That one in particular.
I'm told it's like within a very short time frame. And I've been speaking to my friend and colleague Ross Coulthard about this as well. We've had some kind of in-depth chats about it. And I was going to say, I don't like using somebody else's name, but he told me that, because I was started talking to him about it, and he's like, shit, it's like my sources in the intelligence community are telling me the same things about future humans.
That's what I was going to say. It's
not just me making shit up.
Yeah. But I mean, so we're talking within the next decade, possibly less than
sooner.
that.
Possibly sooner.
Ooh. Rather, what are you thinking right now? I'm curious.
Well, my thoughts are, a lot of my research into time travel talks about, you can, if you were to create a hypothetical time travel device, you could probably only travel back to past to the point where you created that time travel device.
That's
So,
what I'm told.
So, the question is, why is 2021 relevant? Do you think maybe we've started to create an initial time travel device and that's why they're coming back to this time?
I don't know. It's weird because I was told another theory as well. I mean, I was told by one person, you can't travel past when the device was actually first invented, right?
Yeah.
But then I've been told by other people that these kind of time travelers have been with us for hundreds of years, if not longer.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of confused about it, and I I'm not a physicist, right? I'm not a temporal expert, so it's hard. I mean, this is hard enough for me to get my head around.
Maybe some sort of offshoot human society, hundreds of years back that maybe have figured it out,
or somebody. I mean, what about this for a crazy theory? I mean, people came back from the future and colonized the past.
Wow. That's heavy.
Jeez.
That's pretty heavy. I mean, my understanding of time travel is that going back in time is harder than going to the future. And the reason why is you have to not only travel back in time, you have to travel back in space. The planet is moving through the galaxy like a bullet, with all of these planets traveling around it. So that means if you created a time machine, you would have to reverse not only just our planet, but everything to get back to this point, to this date, to this time. So I also have a hard time buying this time travel theory because there's a lot. I think Back to the Future was the best thing ever written about time travel, but it's a lot messier than people think. I mean, I think it's theoretically possible, but it would be the amount of energy that you would need to produce to move an entire solar system back 300 years in space and time is just too hard to think about. I mean, what do you?
I agree, but then you get smart people, right? And this is in the open world, like Jack Sarfati, right? Whether you agree with his physics or not, the guy is brilliant, right? You only have to look at his education and how long he's been doing it. He had his PhD before I was born. You look at him, he I've spoken to him loads and loads of time. He agrees with Michael Masters. He's well on with the future humans. He believes that he was contacted aged 8 years old or whatever it was by a clickety-clack voice from some ship orbiting the planet. I mean, he believes in that. Michael Masters believes that, the Greys are us in the future, the intelligent people. And then you go into the black world and people are saying the same thing to me, to Ross Coulthard,
we got to get Michael Masters back on the show because there's some questions I have for him because it's wild. It's wild to think about. But then again, that theory to me is just as good as any other theory that's been thrown out there. Any other theory. So, but the difference with this one is that it's coming from I consider Frank a pretty credible source and a smart guy. And then you compound that with Jack Sarfati, and then his discussions with Ross Coulthard. And I'd love to know who your source is.
I want to ask two questions that you most likely can't answer, but I'm going to ask anyway. You can just say you can't say anything. You mentioned that these people you were speaking to were receiving briefings.
I said they'd seen briefings.
They'd seen briefings. So there are briefings being prepared regarding this specific theory of future humans?
Well, all I can say to that is from a defense intelligence perspective, if there was a credible belief that this were in fact true, then yeah, you would provide briefings on it,
right,
just as you would on Russian activity in Crimea, the North Koreans people armies activities along the Korean border, right? You would prepare a threat assessment.
Right. Okay. That's really interesting. And then this group you've been talking to, I think the answer is yes, but I kind of want to hear from your mouth. Like, so the people you're talking to, this is not just maybe from one singular working group, but are you hearing this from multiple sources, maybe from within different parts of the IC or the DoD?
I'm hearing it from IC, and I'm hearing it from people in science. Got it.
Wow, fascinating. Thank you.
So I'm assuming the Christmas party at the SCU is probably pretty lit.
But yeah, look, it sounds so out there. To be honest, I was really, really kind of scratching my head as to whether I was actually going to talk about these things in public, just because it sounds so out there. Probably feeling, I really thought long and hard about whether I was actually going to talk about it. But I mean, it's absolutely fascinating, and the fact that what helped me was the fact that Michael Masters has kind of blazed away with this fantastic book on it, and he is indisputably a very, very smart man.
Yeah. If these aren't the bombshells you are prepared to tell, I'm really curious what the actual bombshells are.
Yeah. All right. So we've been waiting long enough. Let's get to some bombshells. But actually, before we get to the bombshells, I just want to play this quick little commercial for you guys. I'm going to tell you all right now, all of these wonderful people would not be here without Patreon supporters like you. If you enjoy credible news, reviews, and commentary on UFOs and UAPs 5 days a week, you want to support this show. What's your name? Marty. Marty, look how easy this is, Marty. Pick up your phone. Boom! You're a Patreon member. I mean, look, it's so easy. You just click the link, which is right here. Just for $1 a month, you can support this show. Just fill out the information and pledge what's comfortable for you. It could be $1, $5, $10, or who knows. Just support. All right, you guys, just support. Thank you so much. All right, so let's get to some bombshells. That's what people are screaming for, and then hopefully we can leave the last half hour here for some other things to discuss, because there's been a lot of stuff that's happened over just over the weekend, especially with former Senator Bill Nelson, and I'm sure I'd love to get your thoughts on that too, Frank. But let's do it. You told me that you had, if I'm not mistaken, I'm looking back at our correspondence here, that you had some bombshells about, what was it, Skinwalker?
First one, Skinwalker. I've got another one which is very interesting, Eric Davis and a pre-ORSAP investigation, and I've got another very interesting one on the Wilson doc. And they're all pretty fast, but the first one relates to a DIA program at Skinwalker Ranch outside of the Advanced Aerospace Weapons System Applications Program. I was chatting tonight with a friend in the IC, somebody that I know and have worked with, and I sent them basically the link to your podcast, right? And they said, awesome, that looks really good. And I said, and then he said, is this what you'll be speaking about in the meeting? And I go, amongst other things. And I said, why Defense Intelligence Agency and ORSAT program was interested in cryptics at Skinwalker and weaponization of the phenomena there. So then they come back, yeah, I did hear about that. They also funded some other projects there as well. I'm like, projects outside of ORSAT? Correct, They reply. I'm like, what? And then they go, and then I asked, before ORSAP or after ORSAP? And then there was just like no reply. And that was like hours ago.
Ah, interesting. So you're saying there's other programs that are sort of in the same vein as OSAP that we haven't heard about yet, that have been conducted either before or after OSAP. I'm curious. I wonder if, that's the timeline is important.
I am, but I'm kind of like reluctant to speculate on that. I mean, I would have thought it would have been easier for the DIA to do it after ORSAP, because they've already got kind of like, people and infrastructure they can call on, although they'd have to have money for another program. But one thing very, very interesting, and I mentioned Colonel John Alexander. Now, I'm not putting words in his mouth. This is just theory and supposition. But look at what his background was, right, at the Pentagon. Mm-hmm. He sat on billions of dollars, right? And he told me, this is open source, directed energy weapons, black projects, white projects, developing these weapons. And then he was also project director for non-lethal weapons development. And he was hired by Bigelow, right, to go pre-NIDS, even before NIDS was there. As soon as Bigelow got the ranch, he got John Alexander there, and John Alexander was sitting out, by himself at night, looking for phenomena. So he's got a big pair. But that's an interesting little nugget there. And also as well, Colonel Alexander, and I had this confirmed with another source in the IC. The colonel told me that I put this in my first paper, that he actually introduced Eric Davis to Bigelow, and he actually got him hired, and that's how Eric Davis came on board. With NIDS, it was through Colonel John Alexander. Sorry, go ahead.
I'd love to run this theory by you. I published this on my channel the other day, but it looks to me like, when you talk about these really weird phenomena that's going on at Skinwalker Ranch, and you talk about it being contagious, and then they also talk about there's immune system responses after you experience these things.
Yeah.
What do you think about the possibility that there's an actual biological agent behind this? Maybe a non-lethal bioweapon that causes fear and causes people to, nope out of an area.
Ooh, almost kind of like the Scarecrow from Batman.
Yeah, or some kind of like pheromone. Some kind of pheromone that's released, or some kind of like maybe some kind of directed energy device that causes panic or causes fear. Okay, we know that they have these kind of technologies for like riot control. We also know that there are these kind of technologies, if you look at Havana syndrome, although the people that I talk to, they say, and I mean, this is a whole different topic, but there's a massive counterintelligence threat to people who actually work in UAP programs. And some of it involves directed energy weapons, and of the non-acoustic kind. We're talking, radiation, basically, that cooks people. So all these technologies are out there. I am really not sure with the phenomenon. Is it able to kind of like, control your mind? I mean, there was that story with Eric Davis, that he was kind of like taken over by something for a few moments. So I don't know, and I keep an open mind. Is it technology, or is it something like really kind of out there that we don't understand and can't fathom? If you look at in the 1970s, and don't forget John Alexander as well, there was that film, The Men Who Stare at Goats, and they were like, special forces guys trying to look at goats and kill them. The Russians and the Eastern Europeans were big time into this kind of parapsychology, in terms of not remote viewing, but like, from a long distance away, you sit in a room and you try and kill somebody like thousands of kilometers away. This is something that the Russians and that the Americans, I believe, have also looked at. So I keep a very open mind to it, very, very open mind. And then there's that great book by Nick Redfern, when he's talking about the Collins elite, and he's talking about how they had kind of people who are like psychics or mediums, and they were trying to get in contact with specific entities, and they ended up being like horribly killed in experiments by these entities. So I don't know, and obviously I can't prove that, but it's fascinating and also very, very disturbing. But if you could harness that technology, first of all, you want to counter it, as I said before. You want to understand what it is, if it's technology or if it's something else, like, some being with a superpower. You want to harness that. You want to know how to counter it. You want to harness it. You want to stop anybody else getting it, and you want to be able to deploy it and use it from a military perspective.
Yeah, I mean, if you can make your enemy have hallucinations of dino beavers, I'd say that's a pretty interesting weapon.
Well, yeah. I mean, imagine you're in Syria, right? Imagine you've got like Islamic State or some like resurgent group like Islamic State, and you've got 3,000 fighters in a town. Well, instead of sending in, instead of bombing the crap out of them, and potentially you could send in, I don't know, if you had like skinwalkers, you could send them in, or you could use some kind of, like you said, some kind of extreme psychological, weapon that would cause them distress, cause them to run away in fear, drop their weapons. I mean, that would be bargain basement, wouldn't it? You wouldn't have to waste any ordnance until later. You could kill them in the desert, right, when they're out in the open.
Ooh, that's a wild theory. Rather, what do you got?
Well, yeah, no, I agree. I think that it seems like a biological agent to me. And I wonder, so it sounds like you aren't convinced that these are real physical aberrations necessarily at Skinwalker, and you're open to the notion that it might be some sort of induced hallucination or something like that.
Oh, I believe they're real. I believe that there are things that are non-human there for sure. But I also believe there could be, I mean, we don't know all the things that have happened at ORSAP, okay? And I've been told some pretty crazy things, that some of the at least one of the phenomenon there was actually weaponized by DIA, is what I've been told by a very reliable source. And and that was not technological. But I'm also open to the idea that that there were other things being tested there that were technological, i.e. from from the United States. And if you look at like slide 9, there's some indication there that there's technologies involved.
Do you have a backup, Rather? Look what Artisan Tony said. $10 donation. He says, "Okay, Rather, let's have some pushback on this voodoo talk." Which is it's hard for people to swallow this, right? Like, I mean,
it's hard for me to swallow it.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard for anybody to swallow this. And I'm not saying anybody should. Like, you should always ask questions and have pushback. So I guess, Frank, let me ask you this: what's your pushback on this when you hear stuff like this?
Very open-minded. I've said before once, I think it was actually with you guys. I said I'm an experiencer, so I keep a very, very open mind. I believe that there's stuff that there are things there that are not technology. I believe that there are entities that interact with us, whether invisibly or visibly. Some people can see them, some people can't. I just believe that, and from my own experiences and from what I've been told. I mean, I had one experience, and I talked to Colonel John Alexander about it, and he was like, "Oh, welcome to in his email. He's like, welcome to the club." He goes, "People who investigate this type of thing, things happen to them." And then he gave me advice on how to cleanse my house and do smudging and that kind of stuff. And I was like, I don't want to be a member of the club. I don't want to have experiences.
Well, I mean, we had God, why am I forgetting his name? I'm sorry. Like I said, I'm a little sick, you guys, feeling under the weather. But we had on Singularity Lab the other day, we had the producer of the first season of Skinwalker, and he told us on the show, TJ Allard. Sorry, thank you.
Yeah,
Rather. And TJ was very adamant. He's like, I will never go back there ever again. He described being sick for months after visiting the ranch. And then you've got like Gary Voorhees saying, I would seriously not go there if you didn't have to. It is not an attraction. It's actually dangerous. One of my team got really effed up there. So we're trying not to curse because we have a radio show now on Fridays. So we got to get used to this idea of not cursing. But thank you, Gary. I mean, like, this is something that I hear from I think are credible people not trying to run the roost within this community. They're just telling you, hey, I've been there. Yeah, there's something weird. I'm not putting a label on it. I'm not saying this is what it is, but it's undeniable, I think, at some point, right? Like, at what point do we go, okay, we got to start really paying attention to this? I'm curious. I would love to see Brandon Fugel maybe even, I know he's got billions of dollars, but I mean, he can open source this. He could get a study going in the state of Utah on this ranch, maybe through the local colleges. I think that would be super helpful and useful. I mean, what are your thoughts, Frank?
I think it's incredibly dangerous. If you look at people who actually prepared themselves, I mean, I say prepared for themselves. I mean, people like John Alexander, who's got a PhD and, in those things. He's been all around the world meeting shamans and immersing himself in kind of consciousness studies, which is one reason that Bigelow liked Colonel John Alexander so much, was because he was into this, this life after death stuff, right? People like, the Colonel, who prepared themselves before they went to Skinwalker, who were very kind of like well-grounded. And then you had, other, like in the Skinwalkers at the Pentagon book, they're talking about, three seasoned, combat veteran DIA operatives who went to Skinwalker, and they ended up, like you said, having this contagion that affected their family, that affected their neighbors, having multiple events happening at the same time, like, 1,000 miles apart. So I think it's very, very dangerous. Anybody just walking on there, you got to be very, very, very careful and be very, very well prepared. I'd think a million times before going there. I wouldn't want to bring something back with me. I really wouldn't. Something that could affect my family.
So then how do we study this then?
I think part of it is looking back as well through the literature. I mean, there's a very famous case from it's called the Bell Witch, or the Bell Witch haunting, and one of my science sources, they were telling me that they knew all about this because they had family who lived in the area. Between 1817 to 1821, this family are basically terrorized. This farmer is at 1817. He shoots basically what was like some animal that was a shapeshifter, and then you read through the story, and it's got all the ingredients of Skinwalker Ranch, like the disembodied voices, the cryptid animals, the animals that don't die when they get shot, the children being like scratched and harassed when they're in bed, all kinds of crazy things happening, and it's just like Skinwalker. So I think looking through the literature as well, just as you look through the UFO literature, and I mean, what is like a direwolf or a dog man, or what they call a loup-garou, like in Louisiana? It's basically a werewolf, isn't it? I mean, that's a werewolf legend, it seems to me, that's been going for hundreds, if not thousands of years, kind of like a werewolf stroke animal shapeshifter legends.
So just a quick shout out to Jess Rogie with the Rogie Report. Thank you for being here, my lady. We truly love you. But how do we study it though, Frank? Like, what do we do? Like, what has to be done to safely ensure that, or I guess you don't know, but do you have any theories on like how can we get universities involved in this, and the military, and a private entity like a Brandon Fugel, and try and figure this out in a safe way? Like, what if you were in charge of the program, how would you go about ensuring safety, but at the same time trying to get tangible, on paper, studyable results?
Yeah, well, they've kind of got a blueprint for it, haven't they? In one of the appendices of the Skinwalkers, the Pentagon book, about how a future program should be set up, and there's about 6 or 7 points there that people should read through, which is very interesting. I actually, before this, I read the first Skinwalker book and then the second one, kind of like back to back, and took notes, and also as well everything that I'd written for my first paper, talked to John Alexander, who'd actually been there, etc. But in terms of how to do it safely, yeah, I think you'd have to have seasoned kind of operatives, kind of like NIDS or ORSAT type people, a mixture of sort of people with technical capability, with scientific capability, but people as well like John Alexander, who know how to ground themselves and can help people to ground themselves before they go, and to prepare themselves psychologically and emotionally before they go. But I think if there were going to be an open source study of it, then yeah, certainly the data could be processed at universities. They could leverage the computing power of university computers, and have universities help them with databases, as Jacques Vallée came and helped ORSAT with their databases. So I think that would be a way to do it. But to have kind of like students and kind of anthropology professors like walking around on Skinwalker, just kind of like doing a ginganguli on a school day trip, I don't think would be advisable at all. You would have to have like, as if you were going to deploy to Iraq or deploy to a war zone, you'd probably want to have like maybe a 6-week boot camp for people to train them in exactly what they would experience before they go to Skinwalker, how to deal with it, how to take the measurements, and to basically do their job.
No, that's awesome. So if you guys are just tuning in, we got our first bombshell about Skinwalker Ranch, that there could have been possible other programs outside of OSAP started either prior or after the Skinwalker study. So that's the first thing that Frank provided as a bombshell. So what's the second one you want to talk about?
Well, yeah, I was just going to talk about Wilson quickly, the Wilson doc, just because I was kind of not skeptical about it. I kept an open mind. In my first paper, I said, look, there's no definite proof. Nobody's gone on the record. It looks very, very interesting. I said, it's worthy of further investigation, right? And I left it open. And then, Inference on Twitter, Brit in Wonderland, she pinged me and she's like, look, Frank, can you help me do some research? So part of my research was I got hold of this individual who told us which documents that we could be looking at. And he says, I suggest she review blah, blah, blah. And then they say, I reviewed all of those programs, every single one, as a member of the senior review group. That's at the SAPOC, right? The Special Access Program Oversight Committee. So this person was at the very top, right? Yeah. So I reviewed all of these programs, every single one, as a member of the SIG, and because my office was responsible for the Special Access Program policy and security. Wilson and I overlapped in the Pentagon, and I know Eric Davis very well. I've heard both sides of the story, so I'm quite familiar with the issue. I'll leave it at that. Right? So
please don't leave it at that.
Yeah. But, now, the way that I look at it is I keep an open mind. I'll be honest, my bias is I have come around to believing that it's probably more likely than not likely that the docs are legit. I personally think that they are, based on what people haven't said and what they have said. But keeping an open mind, there's one thing that nobody's looked at, and I was going back through my first paper. So Eric Davis allegedly has his meeting with Admiral Thomas Wilson in October 2002, right? And he's taking notes on Wilson's description of Wilson's experiences between April and June 1997. But in an interview with Alejandro Rojas in April 2020, which I quoted at length in my first paper, Davis says, the crash retrieval program is a very small program, blah, blah, blah. It was very poorly funded program. I do know that the program was terminated in 1989 for lack of progress in reverse engineering anything that they had, any of the hardware that they had. And they'll resurrect it maybe every so often. So many years will go by and they'll try it again. And then he goes about the compartmentalization. But the question I ask is, so why would Davis say it was terminated in 1989 if he wrote his memo in 2002 about events that were taking place in 1997?
Yeah.
Can you explain why that's significant?
Well, yeah, he's saying it's terminated. The program was terminated in 1989, but supposedly, Davis Wilson was having these problems gaining access to this unacknowledged special access program in 1997, which was supposedly related to Davis in 2002. That's the kind of fly in the ointment. And
wouldn't that point to discrediting the memos then?
Well, yeah, potentially. If he's saying if Davis is saying last year in April 2020 that the program was terminated in 1989, then how could it have still been running in 1997? And how could he have written about it in 2002 if it was terminated in 1989? I'm just saying, I'd really like somebody who's like more immersed in Wilson to kind of like look at that. I mean, someone like UFO Joe, he's written like a really,
UFO Joe is
massive
all
and
in.
great blog on it. He'd be really good. Richard Dolan, I'd like to know what his thoughts are on it. I've already talked to Britt about it. I've talked to Jay at Project Unity about it. So I'm just putting it out there because I don't know. I still keep an open mind. I think that the Wilson documents on balance are legit, and I've come around to that. And one of the biggest ones, probably the biggest one for me, was Bob Maguire saying that he'd seen a letter from a colleague of his in the intelligence community, which was from Wilson saying that he'd been having problems trying to get access to this USAP. And I've got no reason to believe Bob. He's a colleague, and he's straight up. And given his his sort of pedigree and his background, what would he get to bullshit about it? Although even as Bob said, it's a data point that can't be followed because he doesn't have access to the letter. But I believe Bob, so that's how I've come around to it.
Well, I know for sure that Jay Malibu, Project Unity, would probably be the first guy, and him and Joe. I mean, they are. I think it's safe to say they're all in that. They think that these documents are real. I'm really not 100% sure. My whole thing is, it's an awesome story. If it's true, it's mind blowing. And it's an eye opener as to how this stuff works behind the scenes. But as of right this second, as of today, I can't take that. I mean, and I'm sure you've heard on this show, like my sort of standard of proof is, can I put it on the desk of a senator and convince a lawmaker, hey, look at this story. This should convince you to look into. Yeah, FYI, people, Malibu is not Jay's real last name. I added that last name to him. But thank you for clearing that up, Jay. But it's like I can't put this on the desk of a senator because first of all, I don't think they have the time to go through the entire story, and it's just not. It's not for me. It's not. I don't think it would convince a lawmaker to really look into this. Am I wrong on that?
No, I think you're absolutely right. Look, I'm with you. I can't say 100%. I mean, there's nobody has come out definitively on the record and said, yes, it's true. Nobody has produced a document that validates the document. Nobody has produced the technology that they're supposedly talking about, right? So we haven't got any of those ingredients to be able to say 100%. All we've got is like, basically, it's kind of like circumstantial. It's just, personally, I believe on balance, it's more likely to be true than not, but I'm still, I can't be 100% sure until there is definitive proof. That's why I put this out there. I mean, what the comments about the special access program oversight committee, and that was non-committal. I mean, the person could have said it's complete bullshit. They could have said I don't want to talk about it. They said I'll just leave it at that. Or they could have said I'd never heard of it, right? But they said I'll just leave it at that. Now that's not definitive proof. That's not, they're not saying it's real. And then on the other hand, then you've got that little thing with Davis, which nobody seems to have picked up on. How could he say, on the one hand, the program ended in 89, but then have written about it in 2002, and the event supposedly took place in 1997, if it had been terminated, years before in 89. So, I'm still trying to balance it up.
Yeah. Alex Milius with another request. I mean, I don't think this conversation's going that crazy, you guys. I think this is pretty standard stuff. Rather, my bud, please save this and ground us.
I mean, Alex Milius might not be happy with this, but my take on the Wilson memos
when you want rather to zig, he zags. Just FYI out there for everyone.
Well, yeah, I still don't really understand why people are so hung up with the Wilson memos, because it kind of seems like most of the claims have been validated by other people. Didn't Harry Reid say that he was trying to get access to SAP programs and was denied? And there's no real actual, knowledge or any, concrete information that Wilson is saying. He's saying that he was trying to get it and couldn't get it. Like, I don't totally understand what the big hang up on these Wilson memos are.
Yeah, I think it's just that the lack of somebody's, going on the record, or the technology being produced, hangar door being opened, and like, oh yeah, there's the stuff that we were talking about. I mean, Britt and I, we went through like kind of hours and hours of government audit office reports on special access programs, like at companies like TRW, Northrop, Lockheed. We also looked at ones for Department of Energy. Now, if you read those audit reports and the difficulty that auditors have trying to get access to these special access programs, and you then go and read the Wilson doc, it's like, wow, this like makes sense. It's like reading a government audit office. Like the guy went there and he couldn't get access, and it's like all those reports that you've read. Now, is it a very clever hoax? Did somebody read those government audit office reports and then go and write the Wilson docs? There's a lot of different options here, but it's interesting. I just thought I'd throw those two things out there, and then I'd really like it if somebody would pick up the ball and do it. I'm in a weird position because I thought
Britt's
Wilson,
a great person.
I'll just leave it, and then I get sucked back into it.
Well, Britt in Wonderland, she's a wonderful researcher, and I think she's going to be on Daniel Miller's show hopefully next week. Fingers crossed. But here's a $10. Did you have something to say? Rather, I was
just going to say, if we do prove it true, I don't see what knowledge we gain after that.
Right.
But,
sorry, what?
That's all I had to say.
The memo claims that it's crash wreckage at a contractor, right? That's a pretty big claim, isn't that? Am I wrong? I haven't read it in a long time. But
that's what he was trying to get at, right? He was trying to get information that proves that, and he wasn't unable to.
Right.
Yeah, he was basically unable to. He wanted to gain. He believed that he had oversight rights over the program, and he was trying to get access to it. He's like, look, I'm deputy head of the DIA.
If anyone should have access to
it. Yeah. He goes, I'm going to be the next head of the DIA. Like, I should have access to this.
But we know that the Senate minority leader couldn't even access it, right? Harry Reid.
Yeah.
Okay. So, I mean, it's tough, man. It's tough. Like, I think if that is the case where a senator, especially a ranking member of the Senate Intelligence Committee,
part of the Gang of Eight.
Yeah, exactly, part of the Gang of Eight. Like, if they can't get access to this and they're saying, yeah, I wasn't able to get access to this, that's a problem. That's a big problem. And something that we should pay attention to. And I know Matthew or Spaghetti Lee here in the comments said lawmakers don't care. I disagree. Lawmakers do care. And that's why we're getting laws written in offices, permanent offices put, and like by this time next year, we're going to have possibly 3 to 4 reports that have been handed into Congress for them to digest. And I promise you, they care. And they're starting to care more and more every day. And every month or so, a new senator, a new congressman comes out of the woodworks and says something incredible about this topic. And I mean, I just had somebody, right before the show, I was listening to that UFO podcast, and they had Kelleher and George Knapp on, and within the chats, I was just saying hello to people, and I had somebody said, hey, I got called today by my congressman in Utah from the Capitol, and in direct reference to one of the templates that he sent during the Big Phone Home. So they care. And trust me when I tell you, it's starting to get on their radar. I think a majority of them, I agree with you, don't care or just haven't heard about it yet. It's not that they don't care. It's just their constituency hasn't told them, hey, look at this, you know. But when we hear about Tommy Zito, I've got a response from my congressman. We got, you know, the gentleman I just told you about, like just a couple of weeks ago, Mark Walker from a terrorism and counterintelligence subcommittees, he's coming out and talking about this topic. We had Tim Burchett on the Big Phone Home. Like, they're starting to talk about this. So I wouldn't go as far to say as they don't care. I just think they're not read in on it as much as we thought they would be. Like, and that's I think the disconnect here is that the reason why your local state or a local representative doesn't care about this is because you haven't called them and told them about it and haven't given them a reason to care about it. But if you hold their feet to the fire, it took Tommy Zito 2 years of contacting his congressman before he got a sit-down meeting with a congressman. We've gone over this. It works. You just have to be consistent. You have to be relentless. And that's why we do the Big Phone Home. If you haven't heard of it, please go check out the bigphonehome.com. It's not a weekend event. It's every day. It's every month. It's every year we're going to be talking about this. You can use the templates today and still email them to your congressman and senator. It works. So do it. So I agree and disagree with you, Spaghetti Lee, but $10 super chat from John Music. James Fox bombshell that he found out through his contacts at least 1% of the current population is non-human, and all of the research into the growing emergence of star children seems we're being replaced. What do you think, Frank?
Yeah, if you're kind of going down the David Jacobs route, the kind of like, the threat walking among us. I studied those quite heavily. I actually produced I think it was a 24 or 25 page report based on his work from the point of view of like a counterintelligence perspective, as if it were like, true, genuine. How would you counter the threat? So I wrote this paper. It's unpublished. I keep an open mind. I don't know. I don't have any proof. I've heard other people who are I've heard at least one member of ORSAP who consults the government say that it's he was completely discredited by the end of his career, and that he was basically losing it, and it was faulty data. Somebody who's actually an insider saying that. I don't know. I think some of his work was very compelling. If it is true, I mean, there's a lot of people saying the same thing, and there's even outside of Jacob's work, there's a lot of people claiming, malign experiences. Some people claim good experiences. There's a lot of people claiming bad experiences. Are they all talking shit? I don't think so. There's something happening. I don't know if it's, people have physical reactions. I mean, we talked about this in relation to Skinwalker, but, people have, Jeremy Corbell's, movie about, the implants, right? I mean, there is something going on here. There is something going on. You can't have tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of people having like mass hysteria or a mass illusion or a mass BS session. In my opinion, I think some people, obviously they make crap up, but there's a hell of a lot of people who are absolutely genuine and who have bad experiences and live in abject terror because of it, and had their lives ruined because of it. And I'm very, very sympathetic towards that. Other people claim to have had very, very good experiences. I think it's very unfortunate for genuine experiences and genuine abductees that there have been so many charlatans that people immediately get thought of as crazy if they claim to have an experience like that. Right. I think that's very, very unfortunate. To me, it's akin. I mean, in terms of what happens to them, it's like a rape victim being told, "Oh, you made it up," right? It's that kind of trauma. It's trauma on top of the trauma of not being believed on top of the trauma of what you've been through.
Right. No, I mean, we just need another John Mack, like another level-headed, accredited person like John Mack to come out and really start looking at this again. But what do you got, rather?
Well, yeah, if it is 1%, we got 222 people in the live chat, so there's at least 2 aliens in the chat, and I think we found one of them, but there's one more out there.
Excellent, rather. I love you, man. Alex Milius makes a point here, and I don't think it's a bad one, and I kind of have an answer for it, and then I'll let you guys take a crack at it. But he says, how can politicians take UFOs seriously with the turds in the punch bowl? So much BS and not a lot of facts floating around this community. Floating turds. Was there a pun there? Pun unintended. I think Alex Dietrich, David Fravor, the footage, Bill Nelson, these guys are not crackpots. They're not idiots. They're not stupid. And those are the people that our senators and congressmen are either listening to or are going to start knowing who they are. Because if we get congressional hearings, I can promise you it's going to be David Fravor, Alex Dietrich, Chad Underwood. It's going to be the pilots and the people who served in the military that have the credentials, number one, but also the track record of being incredibly professional people. And their stories hasn't changed since 2003 when they first saw this thing, and when they became public in 2017, the stories have stayed very consistent. So I would say I agree with you. There is a lot of turds in the punch bowl, but I think as this conversation, once we get an office, and I can't wait to hear what the name of this office is going to be, but once we get a permanent office within Congress or the Senate to look at this in a very serious manner with a budget and no ending, a yearly budget, not just a small little cracker budget that they have to spread out over the last 5 or 6 years, they're going to get a renewed budget every year. And I think that budget gets bigger every year, if you ask me, because the more they're briefed on this, the more they're going to want to know about it. And again, this is the only bipartisan issue that was voted on within Congress and the Senate, is UAP research. Looking into UAPs, both Republicans and Democrats vote yes on it down the board, with a minor exception here and there. So great point. Do you guys have any thoughts on what Alex is saying here?
I think that's a very good point. But I'd say, I mean, if you look at the ORSAT program as described in that very interesting Skinwalkers at the Pentagon book, if you look at the database that's set up, I mean, the British UFO files. And what was really interesting to me was the files from Brazil, from Operation Plate, because do people take UFO seriously? Those people who were terrorized in Colares in 1977, they certainly took UFO seriously. And so did ORSAT, because they actually went and, it was, I believe, NIDS. They actually went and did an investigation. No, sorry, it was ORSAT that did an investigation in Brazil. So they're certainly taking it seriously.
Yeah, I just like to add, I hate to extend this metaphor, but I think that really every punch bowl has turds. Like if you look at any political issue, there's always, these bizarre conspiracy theories and bizarre people on both sides of the issue. So, I don't think the UFO issue is that different.
That's a great point.
They have the entire national security apparatus at their disposal for intelligence. I mean, they probably don't care what the UFO community
they
contains.
Don't care.
They have briefings from the intelligence community. They got the good stuff, they got the classified stuff. They don't need these dregs on Twitter. So I don't think they really care what the community is saying. They can write laws and make people say things and do things.
Well, I can't remember if it was Mark Walker or Ruben Gallego who said something along the lines, and I'm paraphrasing here, of, we're not trying to look at this to satisfy the appetite of people on Twitter. They're just not. They don't care about our opinions or our thoughts. They want to get to the bottom of this from a security standpoint. They don't want to be the senator or congressman who like a Colares gets, their town or state gets hit by one of these things, and then they don't have any answers, or they don't have any place for people to go to when they start obviously asking questions. Laura Sandling Bennett with a $5 donation says, can we just get on with it and change the name of Space Force to Starfleet? But really, great conversation. Thank you so much, Laura, for the $5 super chat donation. Truly appreciate it. And then there was a super sticker here. Let me see if I can find it real quick. Oh, no, the $2 super chat. Man, same old song and dance, the Condon Report, etc.
I think it's too soon to really have that opinion.
I think it's different. The Condon Report was written, in the late 60s, late 50s? And, at that time in America, and really around the world, there was a handful of channels. CBS, NBC, and maybe ABC. I can't remember when ABC was started. I don't think ABC was around back then. It was just CBS and NBC essentially.
And the UAPTF report from the ODNI, its conclusions are literally the opposite of Condon Report's conclusions. So I don't understand how the UAPTF report, which says the opposite of what the Condon report is, somehow the Condon report.
But you know what this is, right? This is kind of what Frank hit on before, is being ostracized, is being, just because there's a persecution complex with the UFO community. And just because they have a persecution complex does not mean they have not been persecuted. It's just they don't trust the government as far as they could throw it. This statement here has come from everyone that has looked at this, especially over 30, 40, 50 years. They have, if you talk to Don Schmidt, he would absolutely say this exact same thing. Like we can't trust them. They never tell us the truth. Every time they give us a smidgen of truth, they pull it back. And they just play games with us. So I can understand where this is coming from. But all I would say is the difference is now is I think there's more of a public sort of push that's growing, a grassroots movement, so to speak, that's growing, that people are asking and demanding more about this topic. And just like Daniel said, the conclusions are completely different. The funding is different. The world is different. Like, we have the internet. I don't think this conversation is going to be swept under the rug like the Condon Report or Project Blue Book. I don't think it's going to go away that easily. I could be wrong. I hope I'm not. I hope you're wrong. I hope you think that you're wrong. But hey, okay, what does he say here? That's not my point. This is far from the first time the government has acknowledged anything. To be fair, I'm not playing ball until something happens. Fair.
Can I chime in there?
Yeah, please.
I was going to say, we had the Tic Tac UFO executive report, right, which was produced by George Knapp and which was on the TTSA website, and nobody could really pin it down, but it was very compelling. Yeah, I included it in my first paper. Now we've got it pinned down. In June 2009, right, we now know from the Skinwalker book, the second one, that this guy Axelrod completed his report, Tic Tac UFO, which was a Tic Tac UFO executive report, which it basically concluded the blockbuster statement, right, that these anomalous aerial vehicles, the anomalous aerial vehicle was no known aircraft or air vehicle currently in the inventory of the United States or any foreign nation, right? That's in 2009. And we now know that report is legit. It was written by ORSAT under DIA auspices. Yeah. And then on top of that, they wrote that was, I think, 13 pages. Then on top of that, the ORSAT produced an advanced physics analysis of Tic Tac in an additional 141-page report delivered to the DIA in December 2010. So it included detailed physical analysis of the Tic Tac, the velocity acceleration that was distinct from the previous Axelrod report, the Tic Tac UFO executive report. And then on top of that, they say in the book, and that physics report was validated by the report that was done by the SCU on the Nimitz case, and which validated those conclusions. So this was 10 years before the preliminary assessment. They were saying that these are not American, they're not terrestrial, right? 10 years ago, and now we've got that. I think that's something. I think the cat's out of the bag there. There's no going back from that. The DIA has spoken.
Yeah,
right.
No, I agree with you. Miller, you had a question.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask this of you, since I kind of want to, I'm here if any of your sources have mentioned as to reasons why. I feel like the last few years are happening because clearly some within want this info out beyond just Mellon and Elizondo. I mean, look at General McCaslin, who, just all the Tom DeLonge stuff. It never really has made sense to me. Have they mentioned as to, because I feel like this never would have happened if some people within really didn't want this information out. So I don't know if you have any clarity on that.
It goes back to, I haven't asked that question specifically. I will ask it. It goes back to my theory, and I'll give you what I think is my theory, my best guesstimate. At the end of World War II, the Americans had unrivaled military and economic power in the world, right? Europe was destroyed. Everyone was destroyed, basically, apart from the US. And the US had the Marshall Plan. They built up Europe again, and they had the A-bomb, right? So they had unrivaled dominance. The other time that they had unrivaled dominance really was kind of like 1989, sort of 1990, when their principal adversary, the Soviet Union, like imploded. China was still then very backward militarily. The Americans rolled through, Iraq and the first Gulf War. Everybody was like, oh, wow, the weapons that the Americans have, and the Americans are supremely confident. Now, not so. So you're looking for the next thing. If China's about, making, rattling sabers about Taiwan, and China spent those 2 decades that America and its allies were at war in Afghanistan, Iraq, fighting counterinsurgency, the Russians and the Chinese have used that in very specific areas of military technology to catch up, and in some places surpass the capabilities of the United States. So the Americans aren't now assured of total spectrum dominance in the year 2040, right? So it's quite a coincidence. If you look at Eric Davis, is interesting, talking about the dirt, protecting it forward to 2040. The Chinese Communist Party have said, we will retake Taiwan by force. And by 2040, we want to be the unrivaled military, technological and financial power in the world. They've already declared quantum supremacy. So if you want to stop that happening, then, and you're, the gatekeepers, or, you have knowledge of it, that goes back to my theory about you want to unify all these programs that haven't maybe been making that progress. You want to bring them into a big program, big umbrella program. And then you want to start making progress and get that technology before adversaries like Russia, China, and anybody else does. And also because, as it seems to be indicated to me and to Ross Coulthart and others, that there is potentially an existential threat that comes from certain intelligences behind some of the UAP. So that would be why you would want this to come out. But my theory is it's to harness Congress, to harness public opinion, so that you can get these programs changed and brought under different control. It's been kept too many disparate programs that aren't making progress. You want to bring it under one big program, Manhattan Project 2. You want to get the ball rolling, and you want to, in 20 years' time, you want to have 5 observable platforms. You want to have squadrons, basically, of deployable. You want to have deployable squadrons to give you unrivaled total spectrum dominance, basically till as far ahead as you can think. That's just my theory.
Any follow-ups on your question, Miller?
No, I think that answers it great. I guess then that seems like a very reasonable course of action. And then I guess my question is, then why does there seem to be also such parties within who seem to be so resistant to any more information? I guess maybe they just are 2 different parties in terms of what they want to do.
Well, I think, without kind of going like full on conspiracy, I think there's been a lot of like nasty stuff that's been done over the years to keep this quiet, and a lot of lives have been ruined, and a lot of, people have died basically as a result of it. People have been offed, people have been greased. So there's a lot of stuff that people don't want to come out in the wash. And then there's been very interesting things that, that Lou's been talking about, that, Lou Elizondo, that Richard Dolan's also talked about, and I respect Richard's work a lot. About, well, what about the legal liability? If you're one aerospace and defense company and you haven't had access to these technologies, and you haven't been able to make advances, and another company has, then that's unfair competition. That's illegal, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Thank
okay.
you.
So Frank, can you stick around for a few more minutes?
Sure can.
Okay, guys, are you okay with a few more minutes? Because we have to talk about Bill Nelson. We just have to. So we took a poll, and the poll question was, what would you like to hear discussed most during the show? The options were Bill Nelson's comments, UFO, #UFO amnesty, just give me an IV of Frank Miller, or response to the big phone home. So we already did the response to Big Phone Home. That came in last place at 17%. And it was close between give me just an IV drip of Frank Milburn and #UFO amnesty. You just lost the #UFO amnesty by 1%, Frank. I can't believe you guys out there. Unbelievable. Let's
the people have spoken.
The people have spoken.
I think we got a good idea of Frank during this entire show.
Yeah, I think we did too.
I think so.
We're all the better for it.
Yeah, agreed. And then we got #UFO amnesty with 21% of the vote, and then with 42% of the vote, Bill Nelson's comments. People want us to talk about this, and I wanted to talk about this over the weekend, but I wasn't feeling good enough, and I also didn't want to bother the guys on the weekend. But we're here now, so let's discuss it. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here, and we're going to listen to what Bill Nelson said, and maybe we'll stop it as he's talking and sort of discuss some of the things he's talking about. So this is a conversation he had at the University of Virginia Center for Politics, and it was an hour-and-a-half long conversation where students of the university were able to ask him questions. And so this is one of the questions, and here's what happened. Oh, wait.
Not getting any sound, Lou.
It doesn't. Oh, it doesn't. Okay, sorry guys. Sorry, I messed up there. Let me do that again. Pardon my mess up there. There we go. Okay, boom, boom. Share audio. Okay, now you guys will get the audio. Sorry about that. Here we go. Let me rewind that.
Larry, before we leave, I hadn't even talked about the search for extraterrestrial life. What do you think what do you think we're doing on Mars? What do you think we're looking for life? This is a part of NASA's mission. That's what this telescope is going to be looking for. Are there other planets elsewhere that there is life? Now, I know what you've seen is what those Navy pilots saw in 2004, and there have been some 300 sightings since then. And I've talked to those pilots, and they know they saw something, and their radars locked onto it. And then all of a sudden it was here on the surface. And then
I love how he went from microbial life on Mars to things being chased by pilots. like that's a hell of a shift. But dude, I love this guy. But this is also something I think people should realize before we go further with this. If there was an event where these things were caught in a very public way, the first person the president would talk to would be Bill Nelson. If not the first, definitely in the top 5. Fair to say?
I think it depends on what kind of contact it is.
Well, let's just say it's confirmation. Let's say we get it through the James Webb Telescope that there's technosignatures in the universe. Okay? Who do you think is the first person that the president is going to talk to? The administrator of NASA. So This is coming from his mouth. I mean, you saw the shift he just made from microbial life. Why do you think? And also, he brought this up. This wasn't asked, so I got that part wrong.
Talk about it.
He wanted to talk about this. So that's important to say now. But let's listen to the rest of it.
And it's there. And they don't know what it is, and we don't know what it is. We hope it's not an adversary here on Earth that has that kind of technology. But it's something. And so this is a mission that we're constantly looking. Who is out there? Who are we? How did we get here?
How did we get here? How did we get here? This is the NASA administrator asking some pretty existential questions. But I don't even think that's one that a lot in this community have really brought up a whole bunch of, oh, maybe we were placed here. Maybe this is a sort of what do they call it? Panspermia sort of thing. But he didn't mention panspermia when he was talking about this. So when he's like his face, I love this guy's face, this Bill Nelson. But I mean, and then he also describes craft going from here to there in an instant. I think those are two. I mean, for me, those are pretty interesting. What do you guys think?
I think it's very interesting. I would just call BS on, we don't know what they are, right? I think that they definitely know what some of them are. Some of the intelligence behind UAP are. That's all I'd say. And as NASA administrator, he would be briefed in by this point. I would expect him to be briefed in at the highest levels. If there was some kind of techno signature discovered, right? The president would be calling him in. He'd have he'd have the director of national intelligence in there. He'd have the director of the DIA in there. He'd have the head of the CIA would be in there. Yeah, you'd have the Joint Chiefs would be in there. But he would be the go-to space advisor.
What do you got, Rather?
I mean, I don't necessarily think that Bill Nelson has any answers. I think that this fascination where we came from and what's why the universe exists as a whole is kind of why a lot of people like Bill probably got into NASA and became an astronaut and, enjoys astronomy. Like those are kind of like the questions at the heart of all that stuff.
If I'm not mistaken, though, he was also part of the intelligence committees. So he was briefed on this.
Armed services, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he was on the Armed Services Committee, so he's been briefed on this. And
sure.
I think, do you think Bill Nelson has read the classified report that was passed out in June?
I think
I believe he has. He said he had.
And he's been briefed by the UAPTF too.
Yeah. And also think about it, right? NASA's got space missions. You've got commercial space missions. The Americans are concerned about, what the Russians and the Chinese, right, are doing in space. We know from Ross Coulthardt's book that, they've been tracking these fast walkers, right, for decades. So if you're flying vehicles around in space, you've got a need to know what's going to be flying around your vehicles, right? Around NASA vehicles and NASA programs.
No, that's fair. All right, let's see what else he's got to say. Or what were you going to say? Something else?
I'll say this real fast. I think one of the most important things he's mentioned here is technology involved. Because I think so many people who haven't looked very much into this or just are very hard on the skeptical side are convinced these are just, prosaic explanations or perhaps just adversarial electronic intelligence efforts. And I think it's important that the people who have been briefed are saying specifically the technology exhibited, because no matter the answer, that is a big deal, no matter whose it belongs to.
Mm-hmm. We'll get to this $5. Well, let's get to it now. I think NASA would be isolated from UAP info. It's not a secret organization by default.
Yeah, they do pick up secret things. They're seeing secret spy satellites that they have to, and that's probably why they're retracting most of the videos, because of things like that.
Right.
They're going to see these secrets whether they're supposed to or not.
Right. No, I agree with you. And also, you got to remember that Bill Nelson was a former senator. He was an astronaut first, then a senator. Yeah. And now he's the NASA administrator. So he's sort of been able to go through sort of all of the nuances of this conversation in a very interesting perspective. So I agree that I don't think all the secrets NASA would have, but I think they'd be privy to a bunch of them. And I would almost bet that they even have probably caught a couple of them on some of their instrumentation systems that, satellite systems, things like that. But let's see what else Bill's got to say here.
How did we become as we are? How did we develop? How did we civilize? And are those same conditions out there in a universe that has billions of other suns in billions of other galaxies? It's so large, I can't conceive it.
You anticipated one of the questions that I have here, because it was suggested to me by many different people. They did want your comment on what you think the fighter pilot saw. I think most people saw that 60 Minutes piece, and there were a lot of newspaper pieces about whether or not it was Russia or China, or perhaps more likely some extraterrestrial intelligent beings. What is your theory? You've heard a lot of options. Which one do you think is the most credible, if you can choose?
And just FYI, if you were wondering if that 60 Minutes piece actually moved the needle, there you go, right there. A professor at a major university, not only did he see it, but his colleagues saw it and were talking about it. So if you were wondering about 60 Minutes, how far that went, was it good for the community or the topic? Did it move the ball downfield? 100% it did, because now Bill Nelson is being asked about this 60 Minutes piece, and it's brilliant. Any thoughts, you guys?
I agree wholeheartedly. I mean, it's definitely moved the needle. Also, things like Ross Coulthardt's documentary, The Phenomenon, the movie. I mean, all those things are moving the needle. Jacques Vallée's work. I mean, all those things are moving the needle.
Agreed.
Exciting time to be alive.
It is.
All right, just say one thing. I would recommend, if I would recommend, because it's only a short book, I would recommend that these people in Congress, they should be reading that Skinwalkers at the Pentagon book, because that will give them a very, very good insight, and it shows them how seriously it's been taken before it came out in the wash, that for years and years. Now here you go.
I would rather have them read the classified report before I gave them that book.
Sure.
That's just me. Because I think that book would freak a lot of them out.
Yeah, no, you're probably right. Yeah, I mean, a bit woo.
It's a bit woo. But let us continue.
Larry, I don't know the answer to that, but I do know this, that my personal opinion is that the universe is so big, and now there are even theories that there might be other universes. And if that's the case, who am I to say that planet Earth is the only location of a life form that is civilized and organized like ours? But I'll tell you what that makes me think. I better be a better steward of what we have, because we're messing it up. And we're messing it up just the way we're treating each other. And so I know what my mission is: to be a better steward of this planet and be a better citizen of planet Earth. But are there other planet Earths out there? I certainly think so, because the universe is so big.
I mean, that's pretty awesome. Like that's pretty awesome to hear from the NASA administrator. And I loved how thoughtful he came across. Like, he was genuinely thinking about what he was saying and how he was saying it and how he was delivering the message. Jablis, for a $10 donation. Thank you guys. Love your work. Thank you. Love your donation. Love the support. We appreciate it. And Jean-Francois Chalabois, how much of Nelson is fact, opinion, looking for bigger budget? You think
he said it was his own opinion?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I don't think he said anything that is disputable, right? Like, there are billions and billions of stars. We know that there are other universes now. I thought that was one of the craziest things that he said. Avi Loeb is also mentioning this now, and it seems like maybe there's something that they know that we don't know around that. But yeah,
he's saying things that most astrophysicists, astronomers, I think, would agree with. I mean, he might not. They might not agree with him in terms of what the stuff here, but in terms of the amount of planets out in the world, and that is a pretty common point of view within the scientific community now. Is odds are pretty good there is some kind of life out there because of just the sheer number. So he's not saying anything really that's, in my opinion, was remotely quote unquote out there, except maybe his opinion of what the Tic Tac things are, but maybe not. And he's into it, and we're lucky that NASA administrator is so interested in it, because no matter what he knows or not, his opinions hold quite a bit of power. He's responsible for a lot of policy over there.
Yeah, that's the kind of guy you want in that position.
Exactly. All right. So I know you got to get out of here in about 4 minutes, rather. So let's wrap up the show. Real quick, Frank, thank you guys, all of you guys, for staying a little bit longer than we normally go. I truly appreciate it. But I just, any closing thoughts, either to Bill Nelson or what people should be looking for, definitely please share where people could find your work. I've also got Frank's links down below, so check it out. But floor is yours, Frank.
Yeah, thanks very much. Yeah, I mean, I'm on Twitter and Facebook, also on academia, where I've got stuff that's not UAP related as well. Closing thoughts? No, I just want to say thanks very much, guys. It was really, really good. In fact, I had a whole list of notes prepared. I didn't even have to, I hardly looked at them really, because you guys just led it and it just kind of flowed, and I really, really enjoyed it. Enjoyed it.
Appreciate it. No, we enjoyed the conversation as well. I can't wait to have you back. Doors open for you anytime you'd like to come back. It was
I appreciate that, and likewise both ways.
Yeah, I mean, that was 2 hours and 15 minutes that flew by. So Frank Milburn, thank you so damn much. It was an absolute pleasure, and we'll see you soon, sir. Ciao. All right, you guys. Well, that was today's show. I'm going to let you get out of here first. What do you got to say, buddy? How was the show for you? What did you think?
It was great. Really enjoyed talking to Frank. I think it's a lot of interesting stuff to say. I'd love to talk further with him in future shows. I think he had valuable guests.
Yeah, I love there was something here that Spaghetti Lee said. I was just like, he's supporting of the show, but he is funny because he said nothing interesting. Nothing. Like, I don't know, man. Have you ever heard a NASA administrator say anything remotely close to that other than talking about microbial life?
Yeah, I think it's really his attitude.
His attitude, yeah.
Not necessarily what he said, but how he said it and
how he said
his
it.
position to.
I wish he had that really big smile that he had on that one video that we went over. But I mean,
can you
like,
imagine if a NASA administrator
say?
said that 5 years ago? I mean, it'd be front page news probably, But,
well, that's the thing that kind of caught me by surprise is that it wasn't. I think because it happened on the Friday night, if I'm not mistaken. So the news didn't pick it up almost at all, which was kind of a bummer for me. But I was hoping that mainstream would have at least picked this up and talked about it, but they really haven't. I think there was an article written on it, but I haven't read it yet.
Doesn't say much.
Yeah, it doesn't say much. But all right, before you get out of here, anything else you want to add?
Yeah, I'm just gonna say, hit up the Discord. I really like listening to what you all have to say there, and it's great to get a kind of a quick glance at the news. So I really appreciate everyone in our Discord, and encourage other people to join and check out my channel, Rather Be Squidding, for more of my thoughts on the skinwalkers at the Pentagon and what I think might be the origin there.
Definitely. And again, Rather's link is in the description below. And Rather is very active on the Discord. So if you want to talk to Rather, go hit him up. To be. I am not active on the.
We'll get you in there someday.
Once this is a legitimate full-time job, I promise you, I'll be all over the Discord. But I've got 2 full-time jobs, and I'm also a nurse part-time. So with all of that, thank you, Rather. I'm going to let you get out of here, buddy.
Thanks, guys. See you.
Hey, man.
Miller, you've got a show tomorrow.
I got a show tomorrow.
Please,
1
tell
p.m.
Tell the people who you're talking to.
I got Graham Rendell coming in. I know you guys had him a month ago, but we're going to dive deep into his latest book, UFOs Before Roswell. Talk about Foo Fighters. Talk about how he went about getting all the dearth of just the giant quantity of details and documents he got. It's got a lot of details, and it kind of, reading it blew my mind because it's just it's not widely public knowledge, I think, the Foo Fighters, and just how documented it was. So yeah, I'm pumped to talk to him about it.
Well, it's cool because Graham is a friend of the show. I think this show is the first show he's ever been on.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
And he was on Coast to Coast last night.
He was. I know. I'm gonna listen to it later
man.
today. That's so cool. It's awesome.
I love to see good work get highlighted, and Graham does amazing work. So if you haven't bought the book yet, please do so.
And the cover is so cool.
The cover is cool as hell. It's designed by the Signal and Olaf Rockner. If you guys don't know about this book, I don't know where you've been. All right, Mr. Miller, anything you want to tell the people before you get out of here?
No, you can find me on Twitter. Again, show tomorrow, 1 p.m. I guess I should also join the Discord eventually.
Yeah, definitely get in on there. Yeah. The more UCR guys we have, the better. I don't feel as bad for not being there.
Absolutely.
So, all right, Miller.
All right, guys.
We'll see you tomorrow, buddy.
See you tomorrow.
Ciao. All right, you guys. So that was the show for today. I truly appreciate everyone who was here. Thanks for staying a little longer than normal. We normally don't go this long. We try to cut it off at the 2-hour mark, but I really wanted to get that Bill Nelson stuff in there for you guys. Thank you, everyone in the chat: Spaghetti Lee, Jason Brown, our moderator, Tina Tomaszewski, and Aaron Desario. You guys absolutely rock. Thank you all so much for the super chats, Jean-Francois Chalabois, everyone who donated to the show. This is a public access channel. We are supported by viewers like you. So super chats help with that. Our Patreon, if you want to join that, link is in the description below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, share this show if you enjoyed the conversations. We had some bombshells here. So I'm sure UFO Twitter will slice and dice them in the next few days. So yeah, do us that favor and check out the merch store. We've got some really cool t-shirts, hoodies, coffee mugs, whatever your delight is. I think they're pretty fun. And let's see here. What else am I missing? I'm always missing something. Yeah, I want to say thank you to the sponsor, BlueMarlinChronicles.com, purveyors of the world's finest fishing tackle since 1995. Want to say thank you to DOS Tapes. They provide all of the tunes that you hear on the show. Their Bandcamp link is in the description below. And don't forget to check out the podcast. It'll be available very shortly once I end this show, I'm going to edit it and put it up on the podcast, which is available on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Don't forget, rate and review goes a long way into making sure that the show grows. And yeah, this was a really, really fun time. So appreciate all of you for coming aboard, getting weird with us here on another episode of the Unidentified Celebrity Review, your home for credible news, reviews, and commentary on everything UAP and UFO. Until tomorrow, you guys, stay safe out there. Peace. I'm going to tell y'all right now, all of these wonderful people would not be here without Patreon supporters like you. If you enjoy credible news, reviews, and commentary on UFOs and UAPs 5 days a week, you want to support this show. What's your name? Marty. Marty, look how easy this is, Marty. Pick up your phone. Boom! You're a Patreon member. I mean, look, it's so easy. You just click the link, which is right here. Just for $1 a month, you can support this show. Just fill out the information and pledge what's comfortable for you. It could be $1, $5, $10, or who knows. Just support.
I believe you're enjoying all this. Indeed, Captain. I've never seen him look so happy.
Shut up!
Shh. Shh. Well, what do you know? I finally got the last word.